Chapter 1264. Qin Weibai smiled dreamily, perfect and flawless. She had been looking forward to this scene and this sentence for a long time. Let Li Tianlan be the successor. Qin Weibai could be sure that no one in the entire Jianghu state could think of this except Li Huaqing and Qin Weibai. Li Huaqing's secretary Ma Si might have vaguely guessed everything, but she was not sure. This was Li Huaqing's personal madness. This was truly a huge gamble. And before this trump card was revealed, it was the time for Li Huaqing to hesitate before putting down his chips. His hesitation was reasonable. Because if others knew this idea, almost everyone would think that Li Huaqing was crazy. Li Tianlan. The president. An invincible president of Jianghu state. A president who absolutely controlled his own group and great power. It was unprecedented. It was even unprecedented. In the hundreds of years of the Wang family of Beihai, even at its peak, there was only one female prime minister. The Southeast group had a president. But the Wang family of Beihai did not. The taboo was self-evident. If Li Tianlan could really mature as Li Huaqing said in the future, could calmly deal with all kinds of complex situations, and could fearlessly recognize challenges, then the future of Jianghu state would indeed be extremely bright. The benefits of this were obvious. But behind the so-called benefits, it also represented risks that made countless people restless. The emergence of a strong and invincible president could indeed bring Jianghu state to a new peak. But at that time, would there be room for other people to live in Jianghu state? For the country, for the people, and for themselves? Why was Li Tianlan sitting in the president's position? Would his existence subvert the entire structure of Jianghu state? At that time, would Jianghu state be the Jianghu state of Jianghu state people, or a new, strong and irresistible poison dynasty? No one knew, including Li Huaqing. So this was Li Huaqing's madness and gamble alone. He was really optimistic about Li Tianlan. Therefore, he wanted to take a gamble. But he was afraid that he could not bear the consequences of losing. So during this time in Emperor Dong's palace, he seemed to be calm about advancing and retreating, but he had been struggling and had not made up his mind. He did not dare to talk to Li Tianlan about this. This was the reason why he hesitated. Similarly, this would also be the reason why others would oppose this decision even if they risked their lives. Li Huaqing would hesitate. But the others were different. They couldn't believe it at all. Li Huaqing made such a choice because he really believed that Jianghu state would become better in Li Tianlan's hands. In other words, he was sure that his means could guide Li Tianlan to become a like-minded person in the next 20 years and guide him to become the leader that Jianghu state needed. It had nothing to do with nobility or selflessness. This was a concept. As for the others, no one dared to put their fate in the hands of others. Judging from Li Tianlan's current status and prestige, no one could be sure what height he would reach after more than 20 years. But what was certain was that once he really sat in the position of president, his will would almost become the only will of Jianghu state. The voices of the other groups were so insignificant and even pitiful in the face of this will. How could they possibly agree to such a ridiculous thing? Li Huaqing was sure that Li Tianlan would become a real president under his guidance in the future, not a poison genius. This was his philosophy. But others wouldn't trust him. Similarly, they wouldn't trust Li Huaqing. From another perspective, if the person who wanted to support Li Tianlan to become president was not Li Huaqing, but someone else, such as Chen Fengqing before and Guo Wentian now, Li Huaqing would also fully oppose it. This was an absolute conflict of ideas from different positions. Li Huaqing dared to take a gamble now. It was not so much that he chose to trust Li Tianlan after hesitation, but that he trusted his own means. When he said this, all the hesitation and entanglement in his heart had disappeared, leaving only calmness. This was what Qin Weibai was looking forward to and what she wanted to see most. Because from this moment on, Li Huaqing and the academics would automatically become Li Tianlan's staunch allies because of this sentence. Perhaps Li Tianlan would face a very complicated situation in the future, a very difficult situation, a very great pressure. Maybe he would be embarrassed, angry, depressed. But what Li Huaqing said was actually right. In life, no one was really easy. She pushed Li Tianlan to the present height. Next, he had to do something. The man she fell in love with was naturally not a doe who couldn't be helped. She firmly believed this. Next was Li Tianlan's era. Naturally, he was the only one who could really stand up to the sky. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan and gently blinked. Her eyes were as bright as the Milky Way, flowing with starlight, mysterious and magnificent. Li Tianlan didn't notice her expression. He sat in the chair and was silent for a long time, looking a little stupefied. Try to sit in Li Huaqing's position. This sentence was very simple. But in Li Tianlan's ears, it was really earth-shattering. To be honest, this time he was really shocked by Li Huaqing. Become the president of Jianghu state. If this was Li Huaqing's trump card, this was a trump card that Li Tianlan had never thought of, but it was also a condition that Li Tianlan could not refuse. In life, what was the real peak of life? When he was young, Li Tianlan's answer was to restore the glory of the Li family. Now he had done it, so building a dynasty that dominated the dark world had become the goal he had been working hard to achieve. And now, Li Huaqing showed a brand new peak and future in front of him. How could he refuse? This was no longer a question of whether he was tempted or not. Change the world, change Jianghu state, create the future. Everything that was illusory became possible in this sentence. Li Tianlan took a deep breath. He looked at Li Huaqing and asked seriously, "Do you believe me?" He didn't believe that Li Huaqing could not see the risks. But he still revealed this trump card. Was he forced? What was forced was the time to reveal this trump card, and it had nothing to do with the content of the trump card. "I believe in myself." Li Huaqing smiled. "Who knows what you will be like in more than 20 years? You don't know and I don't know. What I believe is that I can train you to be a truly qualified leader." Li Tianlan completely understood what Li Huaqing meant by the test. Jianghu, Li Guangtu, Gu Xingyun? These were indeed tests given by Li Huaqing. But it was only part of the test. The real test was all those who opposed him to become the president. Jianghu and the other two were part of it. The Southeast group must be part of it. The Wang family of Beihai was part of it. The Prince group was also part of it. The North group, which had joined the new group but had always had a subtle attitude, could also be counted as half of it. They would all oppose Li Tianlan to become the president. It was a desperate opposition. If he wanted to become the president, he had to either completely destroy them or completely conquer them. Only by suppressing all voices in this extremely complicated situation could Li Tianlan really pass the test and become truly mature. This goal was undoubtedly long and distant. But Li Tianlan now had enough capital. He had the support of the new group and the giant group. Now he also had the support of the academics and Emperor Dong's palace. This force was enough to support Li Tianlan to face any difficulties and any opponents. It was enough to support him to charge towards that goal. So it was meaningless to still struggle with whether to go to the army headquarters or to become a director. Entering the army headquarters would cause those people to feel uneasy. Becoming a director would also cause those people to rebound. But as long as Li Tianlan did not refuse Li Huaqing's temptation, then the competition with those people was inevitable. Li Tianlan could not refuse Li Huaqing's conditions. He did not know what he would become if he succeeded, what Jianghu state would become, or what height he would reach in the future. But those were not important. It was too far away to talk about those now. But it was precisely because it was far away that it became the clearest goal. With a goal, there would naturally be motivation. That position. The position that all groups had been seeking for hundreds of years since the founding of Jianghu state. The position that had been turbulent in Jianghu state for thousands of years, where heroes racked their brains to fight for supremacy. Everyone was dreaming of it, and everyone was striving for it. If Li Tianlan said that he was not interested, he would probably feel that he was so hypocritical that it was disgusting. His thoughts completely soared between Li Huaqing's words in silence, and in a trance, with unscrupulous sharpness. Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan quietly. He really believed in himself. So when the hesitation and struggle completely disappeared, the sense of oppression on his body became more and more clear. "You haven't told me yet. Do you want to sit in my position and have a try?" "Yes." After a long and short silence, Li Tianlan finally opened his mouth. Just one word, clear and straightforward. Of course he wanted it. No one didn't want it. Even if he became the chosen one in the future. Even if Dong Huang came to the real end of martial arts. Even if he guarded Jianghu state in the future and kept his word. But no matter how rich he was, invincible in the world and powerful in the court, it was two different things compared with sitting in that position. Li Huaqing laughed. "I can help you, and the academy can help you. Tianlan, we still have a long time. I will do my best to make you a real leader and make you realize what responsibility and what real ambition is. Li Tianlan's eyes were a little dazed. He suddenly thought of the consultant who had appeared beside him when he was in the desert prison. Zhou Tong. A name that had been forgotten by many people in Jianghu state. But he was also the strongest opponent that Li Huaqing had ever encountered in his life. Even Li Huaqing had to admit this. The game between the two of them more than 10 years ago seemed calm, but it was extremely tragic. Tit for tat, it affected the whole situation of Jianghu state. And some of the details, except for Zhou Tong and Li Huaqing, until now, no one knew. Everyone saw the final result. Zhou Tong, who had a slight upper hand, lost half a move at the last moment. It was okay to say that Li Huaqing overtook him at the bend, but it was okay to say that he fought back. The final result was clear. Li Huaqing became the crown prince of Jianghu state at that time. Zhou Tong retired in the year of his defeat. Then, 2 years later, he was secretly arrested without being announced and sent to the desert prison. And Li Huaqing became the crown prince. 2 years later, he ascended to his current position until now. Zhou Tong had always had a very special position in the desert prison. Similarly, he was also the prisoner that Li Tianlan valued most in the desert prison. His former identity, his experience, his vision, and his wisdom would not decline because he was in prison. His limitation was that he did not know the situation outside because he was in the desert. He had been infinitely close to the peak of power, but he had also failed miserably. After so many years, if he knew how to reflect, he would definitely be the person who knew what success was best. What he did not know, Li Tianlan knew. What Li Tianlan wanted to know, he knew. So in the desert prison, Li Tianlan asked him to be his personal advisor and asked him a lot of things. His experience, his means, and his decisions were what Li Tianlan needed to absorb. Compared with these, what Li Tianlan valued more was his identity. Zhou Tong came from the prince group. More than 10 years ago, he was able to compete with Li Huaqing for the position of crown prince, which was enough to show his status. He was the top tycoon of the prince group. In the years after he was defeated by Li Huaqing, part of his team was purged. But after all, it was not a competition of the same group. Many times, it was difficult for Li Huaqing to intervene in the backyard of the prince group. His considerable influence was protected by Chen Fengqing and Guo Wentian. Their influence could not interfere with the special place of the desert prison, but for Zhou Tong's son, they were trying their best to cultivate. Zhou Tong's son, Zhou Qi, was now the deputy speaker of Southwest City and one of the most popular backbone of the prince group. In this election, Zhou Qi would definitely go further. He would either become the mayor of Southwest City or the speaker of Talent Province. With his current status in the prince group, 5 years later, he would enter the parliament. It was almost a certainty that he would become the new leader of the prince group. And Zhou Tong's influence in the prince group was not only maintained by Zhou Qi. Although some of the old subordinates he had personally promoted did not enter the parliament, they had great influence in Tianfu, Southwest, Quanzhou, and Nanyun. It was no exaggeration to say that if Zhou Tong left the desert prison and regained his freedom, even if he did not hold any position, even if he had left the center of Jianghu state for many years, as long as he could come out, he would still be the top tycoon of the prince group. What Li Tianlan valued most was the great influence of Zhou Tong after he regained his freedom. He could give Zhou Tong freedom. As long as he could draw this old man to his side, Li Tianlan would have the right to speak in the prince group that could not be ignored. But Zhou Tong refused. He taught Li Tianlan a lot of things, but in the end, he did not choose to leave the desert prison with Li Tianlan. With his vision, after Li Tianlan explained the situation of the outside world to him, he could naturally understand Li Tianlan's position at that time and in the future, and he would also understand his position. He had many reasons to say, but in the end, he did not say much. He just said that he was used to the desert prison and was too lazy to go out. Li Tianlan still felt a little regretful that he did not bring Zhou Tong out. The old man did teach him a lot and gave him a high enough perspective. Now the new group was fighting for the right to speak in the cabinet, and the policy from top to bottom were all inspired by Zhou Tong. And if he could take Zhou Tong with him, it would be much easier for him to face Li Huaqing's test today to shut up the prince group. But there was no if. So it was a pity. Li Tianlan looked at Li Huaqing and nodded. Li Huaqing's eyes flashed. It was not the responsibility, ambition, or anything else he said, but a kind of persistence with very pure expectation. Maybe this was what he wanted Li Tianlan to learn. If you want, you can call me teacher. Li Huaqing smiled. Li Tianlan was stunned. A slender leg quietly stretched out and touched Li Tianlan's calf. There was no tablecloth on the table on the balcony, so Qin Weibai's movement naturally could not be hidden from Li Huaqing. He laughed and his eyes were happy. Li Tianlan stood up and bowed slightly to Li Huaqing. Teacher. This bow did not lose anything, and it had nothing to do with face. But Li Huaqing and Li Tianlan had the most direct teacher-student relationship. The most direct benefit was that the academics could focus on supporting him from now on. From then on, in the next many years, Li Huaqing would try his best to teach Li Tianlan how to become a president, instead of just being an invincible heavenly sun in the dark world. It's not a peaceful time. I will return to Yuzhou today, and we will have plenty of time to meet in the future. The director or the army ministry, there is still time to consider. Li Huaqing smiled and nodded, and said in a gentle voice. If Li Tianlan chose to become a director, he would naturally live in the Hidden Dragon Sea in the future, which was the closest to Li Huaqing and convenient for classes. If he chose to become a member of parliament in the army ministry, then after the election, Li Tianlan would live in Dragon Lake Park, not far from Li Huaqing. There would be plenty of opportunities to meet. Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. Special Warfare Group is a good breakthrough. Li Huaqing continued to speak. If he wanted to go to the top and suppress all those who were not convinced, Special Warfare Group, Prince Group, Southeast Group, Wang family of Beihai, rice should be eaten one bite at a time. In this complicated situation, Special Warfare Group was the best breakthrough. Because in the future, Special Warfare Group would have Jianghu, Li Guangtu, and Gu Xingyun. How to completely suppress them within the scope allowed by the rules, and even subdue or kill them was Li Tianlan's first test. I understand. Li Tianlan nodded. I've made it very clear to Li Guangtu. I'll take him away and give him freedom, but I'll ask him to be your whetstone. I won't participate too much in the affairs of Special Warfare Group. His voice paused. Looking at Li Tianlan's expression, he was not sure if Li Tianlan could understand what he meant. Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai laughed at the same time, with the same charm, very much like husband and wife. Li Huaqing said he wouldn't participate too much. But he didn't say that the academics wouldn't participate too much. This was solid support. Li Huaqing nodded and continued, Li Huaqing is not my man, neither are Jiang Shangyu and Gu Xingyun. Only you are my student. They know their position very well, so no one will be grateful to me for protecting them, and they will not give up their struggle. From now on, no one will be polite to you. I won't remind you of anything, but if one day you are killed by them, everything I said today will be meaningless. Li Tianlan smiled again. He smiled a little carelessly. Behind this unintentional carelessness, there was a kind of confidence that even Li Huaqing felt a little suffocated. What are you going to do about Special Warfare Group? Li Tianlan asked. The 5 Special Operations Departments still exist. Cancel the Special Operations Bureaus in each province, and turn them into Special Operations Departments. Transfer the elites of the existing Special Operations Bureaus into the Special Operations Department, and set up the Special Warfare Legion. Li Huaqing said slowly, you serve as a special advisor of Zhongzhou State and the war god of Zhongzhou State. You can rebuild Zhuanyuantai. Of course, you can also replace it with Emperor Dong's palace. After the study, the parliament will officially confirm the weave of the Nightmare Legion and the Snowdance Corps, which will directly belong to you. Gu Xingyun will form the Kunlun Legion, Jiang Shangyu will form the Samsara Legion, and Li Guangtu will form the Purgatory Legion. At the same time they will be under your jurisdiction. He rubbed his forehead. The 5 legions are united against the external forces, and the 5 special warfare divisions are against the internal forces. The Special Warfare Department will be under the leadership of both you and the military, and the division will be under your jurisdiction. There are still many details that need to be discussed, but once the general structure is confirmed, the rest is not difficult. You can make changes before and after the election. Of course, the special warfare system consisted of more than the combatants mentioned by Li Huaqing. There were also intelligence, resources, logistics, some secret bases overseas, some top-secret archery fields in the country, and some groups on the surface. This was an extremely complete system. When added together, it was incomparably huge. As for how to change it, the parliament would discuss it. But as the new leader of the special warfare system, Li Tianlan's opinion was naturally crucial. The council was currently stuck with Li Guangtu. Now Li Guangtu walked out of Emperor Dong's palace. Next, both the Senate and the Senate, even the think tank of Emperor Dong's palace, had to participate in the reform of the special warfare system. Li Tianlan nodded. After a moment of silence he said calmly, "Let's go and see Li Guangtu again." Chapter 1265. Li Guangtu sat quietly on the sofa and had been silent for a long time. The clock in the room ticked. Li Guangtu held a cigarette and looked at the watch calmly. He wasn't worried about his ending today. Just like what he told Li Huaqing, he knew Li Huaqing better than Li Tianlan. Since Li Huaqing could appear in front of him, Li Guangtu firmly believed that he could leave Emperor Dong's palace today. He didn't know what Li Huaqing would promise Li Tianlan, what trump card he had, or how to persuade Emperor Dong's palace, but it didn't matter. It was enough that he knew what kind of person Li Huaqing was. The hour hand moved soundlessly by one tick. Li Guangtu, who had been waiting silently, also moved and looked at the cage that had imprisoned him for a long time. The environment here was actually good. Located in the castle of Emperor Dong's palace, it was naturally not too shabby. This should be a guest room. The structure of an apartment, the living room was simple and elegant, and the room was comfortable. There was a separate bathroom and washroom, but there was no kitchen, so there was no need for that. Li Tianlan didn't abuse him. He had different kinds of 3 meals a day, which were extremely sumptuous. When he was imprisoned here at the beginning, he was forbidden to smoke and drink. Because his injury was so serious that it went deep into his internal organs, someone sent him medicine every day. They were all Chinese medicine with mild properties, which seemed to be carefully brewed. When his injury was initially stabilized, cigarettes began to be provided, and then there was good wine. Zhonghua Mao Tai, all the same, whether you like it or not. Up until half a month ago, as his injuries healed, he could even choose his own food and drink. It was hard to say whether Li Tianlan was good or bad to him. Except that he couldn't walk freely, Li Tianlan met all his needs in life, took care of his injury, took care of his food, but did not allow him to walk freely, nor did he allow him to have any contact with the outside world. Every day, it was the guards of Emperor Dong's palace who brought him food and medicine, and they basically never talked to him. They would seriously write down his requests, but they never replied, just like mutes. Li Tianlan never looked at him. The two were in a stalemate, as if they would never talk to each other. Li Guangtu could roughly understand what Li Tianlan meant. He didn't want to kill him. At least not before today. If he had not been captured, then in the future dispute between the Purgatory of Heaven capital and Emperor Dong's palace, even if he failed, Li Tianlan would probably imprison him like today. Naturally, the rest of his life would not be as turbulent as before, but at least he could be guaranteed good food and drink. Li Guangtu smiled, somewhat self-deprecating. He carefully recalled his captivity during this period of time and thought of Li Tianlan. The conditions that were previously stated. After today, everything would be in the past. Li Guangtu took out a cigarette, lit it, and smoked silently. There were 2 knocks on the door. Li Huaqing and Li Tianlan pushed the door open again and walked in. Li Guangtu turned his head to look at the two of them, and his eyes narrowed subconsciously. In his sight, Li Huaqing walked in front and Li Tianlan walked behind. This was the relationship that the two of them should have in everyone's hearts. But not long ago when they came in, Li Tianlan was walking in front, and Li Huaqing was half a step behind. So, it's settled? Did Li Tianlan lower his head? It was really fast. Li Guangtu took a deep breath. The breath of freedom came to his face. Instead of joy, he suddenly felt a little lost. Even the freedom that was within reach seemed to become a little dull. We can go. Li Huaqing nodded to Li Guangtu. Li Guangtu looked at Li Tianlan and laughed. What did the president give you? He asked suddenly. You don't need to know. Li Tianlan's voice was indifferent. Li Guangtu's smile remained unchanged and he continued, the conditions you proposed before were really good. As he spoke, he was also quietly observing Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing smiled and said nothing. He was not afraid that Li Guangtu would go back on his word. It was meaningless. Because Li Tianlan was not stupid. Li Guangtu joined Emperor Dong's palace now, and Li Tianlan could indeed get a lot of things. But now that Li Guangtu had left, Li Tianlan would get the whole Jianghu state in the future. This bargaining chip was enough to crush everything. Li Guangtu could not compare with it. The purgatory of heaven capital could not compare either. Sure enough, Li Tianlan shook his head and said without hesitation, "It's too late to regret." Li Guangtu's pupils contracted very subtly. Of course, he didn't really regret it. He was just testing his value in Li Guangtu's eyes to see what the president promised Li Tianlan for his freedom. Li Tianlan answered too simply and without hesitation, which was enough to show that what Li Huaqing promised him was far more attractive to Li Tianlan than himself and the purgatory of heaven capital combined. At least in Li Tianlan's eyes, that was the case. "Tianlan is my student." Li Huaqing chuckled and suddenly said. Li Guangtu froze for a moment and asked subconsciously, "What?" "I'm the teacher's student." Li Tianlan's voice was clear and steady. Li Guangtu suddenly fell silent. He was silent for a long time before he laughed incredulously. Li Tianlan also laughed. "Are you crazy?" Li Guangtu looked at Li Huaqing and asked word by word. Li Huaqing did not respond to him, but pointed to the door. "Are you going or not?" Li Guangtu was so excited that he couldn't speak for a while. Li Tianlan became Li Huaqing's student. This answer was enough to explain everything. Li Huaqing had many students, but it could also be said that he had no students. He was the president and also the dean of the youth academy. So many people who had worked or studied in the youth academy could be regarded as Li Huaqing's students. This was also the origin of the name academics. But the person who could openly call Li Huaqing teacher in front of everyone. Before today, there was no such person. But now there was. Li Tianlan, Li Huaqing's student. What did this relationship mean? It meant that Li Huaqing directly announced the sensitive word of successor. Li Guangtu was the first to know. But then, the relationship between the two of them was enough to detonate the whole Jianghu state. Li Tianlan gave Li Huaqing the purgatory of heaven capital. But Li Huaqing gave Li Tianlan the whole Jianghu state. Li Guangtu completely understood what the phrase, "It's too late to regret," meant. In front of Li Huaqing's bargaining chip, he had no value to Li Tianlan. Worth. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and looked at Li Huaqing and asked. He didn't know he was so valuable. "It's related to you, but not too much." Li Huaqing smiled and said, "Time will prove everything." "Ha, time?" Li Guangtu sneered and said directly, "I don't agree with this." "You're not qualified to say this." Li Tianlan said lightly. "Is qualification important?" Li Guangtu laughed and said, "You can't succeed. I owe you for taking care of me during this time, but I don't intend to pay it back. I refuse your request today. As you said, we are real enemies from now on." Li Tianlan looked at him, expressionless. "So," Li Guangtu said slowly, "don't give me a chance. I'm not as hypocritical as you. Once I have a chance to kill you, I won't hesitate. You can't sit in that position." Li Tianlan gently twitched the corner of his mouth, raised his hand and pointed to the door. "Get out." Chapter 1266. Li Guangtu didn't get out. He stood in front of Li Tianlan, and his smile widened as if he was provoking him. "No regrets. Let me remind you, no matter how wonderful the future is, it's not now. It is said that people should take a long-term view, but if it's too long-term, it's just a dream and unrealistic. After all, you have to look at what's under your feet and in front of you." Li Tianlan's eyes flickered, but he didn't speak. Li Guangtu fumbled in his pocket, took out a cigarette, and handed one to Li Tianlan. His martial arts and Li Tianlan's were of the same origin, so he could naturally see that Li Tianlan was now in his real body. Li Tianlan took the cigarette, lit it with a flick of his finger, and took a deep breath. "It's true that you want to be the president, control this country, and become the most powerful person in the world, but that's all in the future. If I get out of this door today, if I fight against you with all my strength, I can't say that I can kill you, but it's really not difficult to cause you some trouble and give you substantial pressure." He held the cigarette and chuckled. "At that time, you can't even fight against me. You're still too young. You should know that what we're going to face next is what I'm really good at." "Are you done?" Li Tianlan asked. "Am I wrong?" Li Guangtu raised his eyebrows slightly. Li Tianlan smiled. Yes, of course he was right. He understood what Li Guangtu's words meant. Today, Li Guangtu left Emperor Dong's palace, and tomorrow, the Purgatory of Heaven capital would no longer exist. He would become the commander of the Purgatory Legion of Jianghu State. He was the top big shot in the special warfare system of Jianghu State. He could be said to be Li Tianlan's subordinate, and also his opponent. Li Tianlan had a commanding position, and Li Guangtu also had a chance to surpass the senior. As long as he left Emperor Dong's palace today, they would all be bound by various rules of Jianghu State. From the general direction of Jianghu State, Li Tianlan and Li Guangtu were colleagues and people on the same side. People on the same side who were on the opposite side. Headache, trouble and complexity. Once this identity was confirmed, if Li Tianlan wanted to directly attack Li Guangtu, it would be a real treason. So no matter how the two fought, at least on the surface, no one could find fault. For Li Tianlan, who had the absolute advantage of force, this was the biggest limitation. Li Tianlan was too inexperienced to play games under these restrictions. He didn't even know the rules of the game. But Li Guangtu was not like this. Before the treason case, he was already the youngest marshal in Jianghu State at that time, the first commander of the Border Control Corps, and the young master of the Li family. If he had been an idiot with only strength but no brains at that time, it would have been impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to feel a sense of crisis. It was not difficult to play tricks. However, under the various restrictions, it was really not easy to play tricks within the rules of the game. And this just happened to be what Li Guangtu was best at back then. His strength was not as good as Li Tianlan's. But as long as Li Tianlan did not dare to flip the table, it was absolutely easy for him to create some pressure on Li Tianlan. You're right. Perhaps in this aspect, you do have many methods that I have never seen before. It's a pity that I'm not alone now, and there are no useless people in Emperor Dong's palace. If you want to play, there are many people who will accompany you to the end. If you're not convinced, just bring it on. He reached out and helped Li Huaqing tidy his collar. He smiled and said, I probably know that you always think that I owe you. Although I don't know what I owe you, no matter what I owe you, it should not be as important as my life. This time I can kill you. The teacher coming to ask for you doesn't mean anything. You should know that if I didn't bring you back, no one could save you. You're not dead now, so even if I really owe you something, I've probably paid it off. So, if you want to play, you can do whatever you want. When you fall into my hands next time, you won't have this treatment now. There was an emotion similar to jealousy in Li Guangtu's eyes. Now, Li Tianlan was indeed not alone. Emperor Dong's palace was full of talents. It could become the strongest superpower in the dark world today. It had a lot to do with Li Tianlan, but it also had nothing to do with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was really young. However, the military counselors were all wily old foxes who had deep foresight. What's more, there was Qin Wei Bai above these old foxes. Li Guangtu had always longed for such a Emperor Dong's palace. Similarly, such a Emperor Dong's palace really didn't need to be afraid of Li Guangtu. Therefore, Li Tianlan was as calm as a mountain and full of confidence. You'll die and I'll die. That's fair. Li Guangtu nodded and smiled a little strangely. Come on. Li Tianlan didn't know, Li Huaqing didn't know, and everyone didn't know that in fact, he didn't cooperate with Gu Xingyun. From the beginning to the end, he only cooperated with one person. That was Jiang Shangyu. It could be said that Li Guangtu was paranoid or had a sense of superiority in his heart. Li Guangtu really didn't take Li Tianlan seriously. It was not that he looked down on Li Tianlan, but that Li Tianlan was too young. He might be invincible in personal force, but personal force was not omnipotent. Sometimes it was even nothing. In Li Guangtu's mind, if the difficulty of Emperor Dong's palace was 10, Li Tianlan would take 30%, and the other 70% would be Qin Wei Bai. This siren was indeed the person he was most afraid of. It could even be said that as long as she was by Li Tianlan's side, he was unlikely to get the complete Emperor Dong's palace. Jiang Shangyu also seemed to know this. So when he found him to cooperate, he directly said that he had his own solution to this problem. Li Tianlan didn't have Qin Wei Bai by his side. What did this mean? That prospect was so beautiful that he couldn't imagine it. As long as he could go back today, the alliance of the three of them would be officially established. Next, it was time for them to play their cards. Your smile now makes me want to kill you. If there's nothing else, get out. Li Tianlan said in a cold voice.
There is really one thing.
Li Guangtu snorted and looked at Li Tianlan.
How about I call you Your Majesty and ask you for a favor?
Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows.
Unless I can kill you, otherwise if there is no accident, I probably won't come here again.
Li Guangtu said slowly, if possible, I want to see my daughter. Li Tianlan was silent for a moment. Li Huaqing also narrowed his eyes. Few people in Emperor Dong's palace knew where Dongqing Rushi was. Naturally, there were even fewer people who could directly contact her. In Li Huaqing's mind, Li Guangtu's words undoubtedly meant that he was going to send him away so that he could spend time alone with Li Tianlan. But on this matter, he couldn't say anything. Li Tianlan nodded and said calmly, okay, I'll talk to my teacher and ask Senior Yu to take you there. Li Huaqing relaxed his eyebrows and smiled. Chapter 1267. The elevator stopped on the first floor, and a gentle and subtle fragrance floated in the elevator. Li Guangtu followed two female staff out of the elevator and came to the hall on the first floor of the castle again. The hall was not busy, but it was not cold either. From time to time, people passed by Li Guangtu, looking calm, confident, and peaceful. It was not an exaggeration to say that the structure of Emperor Dong's palace was magnificent. This castle was the heart of Emperor Dong's palace, which involved many aspects, such as the close connection with Shenyuan City, the various plans of countless subordinate enterprises of the Flourishing Age Fund, the transmission and collection of intelligence, the maintenance of network security, the transfer of massive funds, the expansion of Emperor Dong's palace in various fields, the distribution of armaments, a large number of private transactions, and so on. Everything would converge here and then spread out from here. So the huge castle was not cold at all. It was more than the family assets he brought from the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy when the East Emperor Palace was established. After the Flourishing Age Fund joined, it also became the headquarters of the Flourishing Age Fund. A large number of elites and managers filled the office space here. The whole castle, except for the top floor where he lived, was full of vitality every moment. Li Guangtu watched quietly, observing every detail around him until an apology came from behind him. General, sorry to keep you waiting. Xiao Mahai, the current chief steward of Emperor Dong's palace, hurried over with a subtle smile. Fortunately, I haven't seen this scene for a long time. It's quite interesting. Li Guangtu laughed. What did you call me? General. According to the information I have, you will be the commander of the Purgatory Legion in the future. The commanders of the 5 legions, Nightmare, Snow Dance, Kunlun, Purgatory, and Samsara, all have the rank of commander. The special warfare system can't accommodate 5 marshals. Xiao Mahai looked around and suddenly said, what's so interesting about this scene? Li Guangtu was silent for a while, as if he was accepting Xiao Mahai's message. After 10 seconds he said lightly, it's like a brothel. Isn't that interesting enough? Xiao Mahai narrowed his eyes slightly. Sorry, that's not the right word. This is more like a clubhouse to please only one person. Li Guangtu corrected his wording. The people working in the castle could be said to be the civil servants of Emperor Dong's palace. It could be said that there were no men, but relatively speaking, the proportion of women was higher. Among the women, the proportion of young women was also very high. But among the young women, unmarried and single women occupied the majority. The basic framework of the establishment of the East Emperor Palace was the young graduates of the 2 academies. Naturally, they were not very old. Inside the Flourishing Age Fund, the older ones were either eliminated or had reached a more important position and were placed in various leadership levels of the Flourishing Age Fund. Only a few followed Han Donglu. Therefore, the interior of the castle of the East Emperor Palace could be said to be a beautiful scenery. Young and beautiful women could be seen everywhere. It was not strange at all to see black silk and beautiful legs and professional clothes everywhere. I missed. Xiao Mahai shook his head. Li Guangtu looked at him. What you see is just the workplace etiquette of modern women. You and I are not at the same level. It's hard for me to explain this to you, so I won't say it. I can only say that the general has been dormant in East Island for many years. His temperament is first class, but his vision is inevitably a little short-sighted. His mind, it seems, has been influenced by some culture of East Island and become a little biased. Xiao Mahai said blandly. I got it. You mean I'm not knowledgeable? Li Guangtu laughed. For so many years, He had heard a lot of ridicule, but Xiaomahai was really the first one he had seen. Listen to what the other party said. You and I are not at the same level. He used to be the young master of the Li family, the youngest marshal in Jianghu state, and the current helmsman of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. His opponents were Li Tianlan, Wang Tianzong, Lin Fengting, and Li Huaqing, who really stood at the top of the world and held the strongest power. But now, a butler of Emperor Dong's palace, to put it bluntly, was a dog at Li Tianlan's feet, and he was saying that he was not at the same level as him. The other party's indifferent and condescending tone made Li Guangtu not have to worry about who was higher and who was lower. He was saying that he was not knowledgeable. That tone was completely like telling him that he was just a bumpkin who had not seen much of the world. Since when could a butler of Emperor Dong's palace look down on him? Li Tianlan, Wang Tianzong, Lin Fengting, Li Huaqing. These were the opponents in his mind. Was it just because he had always felt good about himself? A butler. A lackey. Li Guangtu was still laughing, but his eyes became slightly distorted. General, you misunderstood me. I'm not just saying that you are not knowledgeable. Xiaomahai shook his head and said, when you leave Emperor Dong's palace, I think you should walk around more and don't rush back to the Purgatory of Heaven capital. After staying in a small workshop for a long time, it is inevitable that you will feel that the small workshop is the whole world. You should go to those big enterprises and walk around seriously. The same silk stockings, skirts, high-heeled shoes, and the same delicate and reserved makeup. You can look at those places and see if they are also the clubs and brothels in your eyes. This is life in reality, not those small movies produced in East Island. You can't think that they are that kind of profession just because you have seen those clothes in the movies and see them in reality. I even think that you have already imagined something in your mind. This is not only being ignorant, but also being cheap and nasty. Tiske, I shouldn't have said this to you. It's hard for people with these dirty thoughts to understand what I said, isn't it? His voice was indifferent and casual. In fact, he didn't want to say this, but Li Guangtu didn't know what was good for him and took the initiative to pick a fight. He said that this place was like a brothel, like some bullshit club, which was a direct insult to Emperor Dong's palace and Li Tianlan. As a butler, Xiaomahai naturally wouldn't tolerate his bad habits. Li Guangtu didn't know what was good for him, so he naturally didn't have to show any mercy. What former young master of the Li family? What dominator of the Purgatory of Heaven capital? You have put your face in front of me, and I am embarrassed not to slap you. Li Guangtu listened quietly. The smile on his face became more and more exaggerated, but the light in his eyes became more and more ferocious and cold. A touch of killing intent enveloped Xiaomahai, and Li Guangtu's voice became a little feminine. You are very bold. It's not that I'm bold. Xiaomahai sighed and said, General, you still don't understand. I really look down on you from the bottom of my heart. I don't even have the idea of deliberately humiliating you. It's not necessary, and it's not worth it. I can say this because I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. If you have any misunderstanding, it has nothing to do with me. Li Guangtu's pupils suddenly contracted, as if he had been stimulated by something. His state of mind was actually good, and his willpower was extremely firm. As Xianyuan Wushang once said, now his combat capability all came from the spiritual field. Such a person's willpower could be said to be the most unbreakable place. If it was in normal times, he naturally would not care about the opinion of a mere housekeeper, but no one could understand how sensitive he was now. He was imprisoned in Emperor Dong's palace as a defeated opponent. It seemed that he was eating and drinking well, but for countless days and nights, the situation here made Li Guangtu feel that he was a complete loser, even a waste. He did not feel that he was invincible in the world. But in this world, the most intolerable thing for him was to be defeated by Li Tianlan. This was his inner obsession. The failure this time constantly made him feel as if all the hard work he had put in over the years before had been negated at every moment. This feeling came from the Purgatory of Heaven capital, when Li Honghe appointed Li Tianlan to inherit the Li family, which made Li Guangtu angry. It came from the unwillingness to guard the dragon vein of Jianghu state but could not get it. It came from the anger of many old people of the Li family who had supported him without complaint or regret and were even willing to die for him. But now they gradually drifted away from him and even stood by Li Tianlan. It came from the anger of Situ Tsungyue and Li Shi, who were originally his women, but joined the coldness of Emperor Dong's palace. It came from the luxury of besieging Li Tianlan, but facing that sword, they were so small. It came from the powerlessness of being imprisoned in Emperor Dong's palace. It came from the jealousy of Emperor Dong's palace, which was like the sun at high noon. In many aspects, there were many scenes. Great pressure had been pressing on Li Guangtu, but he held on, gritted his teeth and persisted, year after year, day after day. Finally today, after a short period of imprisonment, he had regained his freedom. Li Tianlan let him go. To some extent, it could even be said that Li Tianlan had given up on him.
What kind of threat and trouble he would cause to Li Tianlan in the future, and the harm of letting the tiger return to the mountain. He believed that Li Tianlan knew these. But Li Tianlan, he didn't care.
Wasn't this also a kind of disregard? Li Guangtu forced himself to smile, but the gloom in his heart had long been real. And now, understatement, calm, natural. Xiao Mahai, a butler, a servant, a lackey, with an indifferent attitude, told him very clearly, I just looked down on you. This was like a knife, from head to toe, cutting him black and blue all over. If even a butler looked down on you, what qualifications do you have to be Li Tianlan's opponent? That was what Xiao Mahai meant. Li Guangtu tried hard to calm his mind, but his breathing still became rapid. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? His voice was cold and fierce. I'm just telling the truth. Why do you want to kill me, General? Xiao Mahai's smile was impeccable, very polite, and very implicit. Since it has come to this, I don't want to say anything false.
General, you can kill me, but do you dare to?
I'm the butler of Emperor Dong's palace, and I'm His Majesty's lackey. If you dare to attack me today, His Majesty will naturally not let you live. So, how can your ridiculous ambition be realized? Li Guangtu became more and more angry, but for the first time, he began to look at the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. Xiao Mahai. He had heard of this person. He used to be a general of Jianghu state. It was not easy for him to have a gold star on his shoulder without any background or backing. In terms of ability, Xiao Mahai also had it. But after blocking others' way, he could only be sent to the desert prison. After Li Tianlan went to the desert prison, all forces attached great importance to it. Of course, including Li Guangtu and Xiao Mahai. It was also because of Li Tianlan that he officially entered the attention of all the big shots. They knew Xiao Mahai before, but they just knew that there was such a person. But after he clung to Li Tianlan's leg, a series of actions really made people pay attention to this lackey of Dong Huang. For more than 2 years, this person really treated Li Tianlan as an ancestor and served him. How special was the status of the desert prison? But he squandered all the funds of the desert prison without being greedy just to let Li Tianlan enjoy life better. He even sent his daughter and sister there. This kind of thing was really not something that anyone could do. Therefore, numerous people in Yuzhou province were full of resentment towards him. They said that he was like a mangy dog who only wagged its tail at his master, that he was shameless, that he had lost the dignity of a soldier, and that he had even said more outrageous words. But the big shots who really stood at the top of the parliament had been silent about this. In the end, Li Tianlan successfully walked out of the desert prison. Xiao Mahai, who was seriously injured and dying under the torture of Gu Qianchuan, was also brought to Tiannan by him. Li Tianlan soared to the sky. Emperor Dong's palace began to transform. After recovering from his injury, Xiao Mahai became the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan put him in this position, which had fully explained his attitude. It showed that in more than 2 years in the desert, he was extremely satisfied and trusted Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai submitted his resignation to the army ministry. But so far, the army ministry had only taken away his identity as the prison governor of the desert prison. His military rank had always been retained. In other words, if Li Tianlan was short of people, or Xiao Mahai was willing to leave Emperor Dong's palace, he could become one of the most powerful generals in the whole Jianghu state in the blink of an eye. He was now the butler of Emperor Dong's palace. Most of those who had scolded and ridiculed him in the past could only bow and talk to him with a smile in front of him now. As for those who could look down on Xiao Mahai now, no one would look down on him. Li Guangtu did not look down on him. In Li Guangtu's eyes, Xiao Mahai was a madman, or a gambler. A person who was willing to abandon all the so-called stability in order to grasp a glimmer of hope. He was resolute, firm, and unwavering. Wasn't this a kind of courage? He did not look down on him, but he did not take it seriously after all. So he said in front of Xiao Mahai,
the butler of Emperor Dong's palace, that Emperor Dong's palace was like a brothel. In fact, he wanted to say more than that. He had a lot of ugly words. It was true that he couldn't do anything to Li Tianlan now. But after being locked up for so long, it would be interesting to taunt Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace before he left to vent his resentment. It would be interesting to see the chief steward of Emperor Dong's palace swallow his anger in front of him. Yes, Li Guangtu was angry. It did not matter whether it was childish or not. During this time, his living conditions were okay, but he felt uncomfortable, so he wanted to make Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace uncomfortable. So he prepared a lot of words. If Emperor Dong's palace was like a brothel and could not provoke Emperor Dong's anger, then he had more lines. But he really did not expect this situation to happen. Swallow his anger? Be angry but dare not speak up? Xiao Mahai laughed. The butler did not hesitate at all. As soon as he started, Li Tianlan had already bitten him without hesitation. There was no scruple, no fear. It was a completely if you dare to provoke me, I will bite you to death, go to hell. He had expected her to swallow her anger and not dare to say anything. Instead, she was sarcastic, condescending, and speaking the truth. She was arrogant and looked down on him. She was arrogant and looked down on him. She was arrogant and looked down on him. Li Guangtu felt that he should not be angry. He did not want to be angry. But he was really disgusted by Xiao Mahai, who originally wanted to disgust Li Tianlan. The other party's words sounded calm, but there were always one or two words that were extremely sharp and piercing straight into his chest. Ridiculous ambition. How ridiculous was that? His ambition was to reintegrate the Li family, to annex the current Emperor Dong's palace, to break through the current boundaries, and to be supreme in personal combat capability. When the Li family recovered to its peak, he would completely annex the Wang family of Beihai and establish a dynasty belonging to the Li family. His words carried weight, and he was the only one. He used to be very close to this dream. But after a case of treason, all this began to start from the beginning. However, Li Guangtu had never given up. He was extremely persistent in pursuing his ambition, and it could even be said that he was struggling for his dream. And all this, in Xiao Mahai's eyes, was ridiculous? It was no longer a mockery. It was an insult. It was a blatant insult to his ambition, his dream, his desire, and even the meaning of his life. Li Guangtu was so angry that he laughed. You say my ambition is ridiculous? It's really ridiculous. Xiao Mahai still had that damn expression, that polite smile that no one could find any fault with, like a mask. In my opinion, General is the most incompetent man, and you are selfish, naive, and ignorant. I know your identity. You are of noble birth, and you used to enjoy endless resources. Senior Li used to support you. It's a pity that you failed to live up to expectations. Who can you blame? You clearly know that the Li family is the best in the hands of His Majesty, but you are not convinced and always want to fight. Pride, bigotry. It seems to be a reason, but in the end, it's just that you use the inheritance of your ancestors to fulfill your ridiculous dignity. You have ambition, but you really don't have strength. You know this yourself. What does this mean? To put it bluntly, you know that you are not as good as others, but you still want to squander and do something, but you achieve nothing. You fight with His Majesty, and the whole world is watching. But the ridiculous thing is that most of your reliance now is just what Senior Li intends to leave to His Majesty. General, what do you have? You have nothing, but you still want to make a comeback all day long. You are like a country monkey, jumping up and down. In the eyes of others, you have long become a joke, but you don't know it. No, maybe you know it and even feel complacent? You want to kill His Majesty, but you know that no matter how much you make trouble, His Majesty doesn't want to kill you? Is this where your confidence comes from? His Majesty has brought you back to this point in order to calm you down. Don't you have the slightest clue as to why exactly? No, you do have an idea, but you deliberately pretend not to see it, because you know that His Majesty doesn't want to kill you. As long as he doesn't kill you, you can go out and continue to jump up and down like a monkey to perform your jokes. Am I right? It's just different, General. It's different. You and the Li family have a good relationship, but no relationship can withstand the consumption. This time, His Majesty can spare your life. If you continue to make trouble, His Majesty won't kill you. Do you really think that Emperor Dong's palace won't be angry?
I am the director of Emperor Dong's palace. But to a certain extent, I can represent Emperor Dong's palace. I can say it here today.
Today, when you go out of this door, Emperor Dong's palace will break with the purgatory of Heaven Capital in the future.
Since you are enemies, why bother? If His Majesty doesn't want to kill you, do you really think that we can't touch your small workshop? It's ridiculous. I am His Majesty's dog, not the Li family's dog. I am the director of Emperor Dong's palace. How deep do you expect me to feel for the Li family?
I respect the elders of the Li family who are now in the camp of Emperor Dong's palace, but for those who don't know what's good for them and don't want to come back, I can't wait for them to die with you.
To be honest, I'm looking forward to this day. I'm looking forward to you bringing the so-called elites of the Li family to die one by one. I'm looking forward to you killing the last bit of the Li family's power.
You have no other skills, but on this matter, General, I believe in you.
Look into my eyes. You can do it. You can do it.
In the case of treason more than 20 years ago, you made the Li family fall from the peak to the dust, but you didn't completely kill the Li family.
It's a pity, isn't it?
So after so many years, since the Li family didn't die, you have to continue to work hard and come again, right?
In fact, I can roughly understand what you mean today.
You said that Emperor Dong's palace is like a brothel, but it shouldn't be all, right? There are more unpleasant things to say next. You can continue to say them, and I'll listen to them as entertainment. If you feel that the audience is not enough, I can make all the people who are not involved anxious and watch you make a fool of yourself.
No, I mean watch you perform. What do you think? Didn't my reaction surprise you as well? Haha, do you think that I'm just a butler and you can disgust Emperor Dong's palace? But this is between you and His Majesty.
Without His Majesty's order, I dare not say anything, can only swallow my anger, and can only be angry with you without saying anything?
Why? Because you used to be the young master of the Li family? Because you are the nominal father of His Majesty?
Because you are an old member of the Li family, so I want to see you find fault here, and I need you to give me some advice, and then disgust His Majesty?
You really forget your identity. You are a captive. Let me put it bluntly. Who do you think you are to give advice to Emperor Dong's palace? What qualifications do you have?
You can live now because of His Majesty's mercy.
If he wanted to kill you, your body would be rotten now. Don't you know what's going on? How dare you provoke Emperor Dong's palace just because you think His Majesty won't kill you? I haven't seen many people like you in my life.
You are incompetent, immoral, ignorant, disloyal, unfilial, and unkind, but you still feel good about yourself, paranoid, and proud.
You are so hypocritical and disgusting.
Voice by voice, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. The mask on Xiao Mahai's face never fell. From beginning to end, he maintained that courteous and reserved smile on his face. He did not bat an eyelid, and looked extremely cultured. He continued to humiliate Li Guangtu and crazily bit his dignity. He watched as his face turned red, his expression twisted, his eyes ferocious, and his body trembled. Xiao Mahai did not stop and said casually. Li Guangtu stood in front of him, and these words were like knives stabbing into his chest. He breathed disorderly, and for a moment, he didn't even know how to refute. Xiao Mahai took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, maintained a polite and respectful smile, and said softly, "General, have a cigarette?"
Silence.
In the long silence, Li Guangtu was surrounded by extremely cold and sharp sword intent. He stared at Xiao Mahai, who was smiling, and the corner of his mouth twitched. After a long time, he let out a long breath.
Xiao Mahai handed over the cigarette. A glimmer of light suddenly flashed between the two. No one in the hall noticed this detail.
The light flashed from bottom to top, and in a flash, it had reached Xiao Mahai's arm.
He really couldn't kill the butler here.
But he didn't believe that he dared to completely fall out with him if he wanted to kill him with only one arm. If what he said was outside Emperor Dong's palace, his life wouldn't be enough to save him.
Here, it didn't matter if he kept one arm. Xiao Mahai didn't move. It seemed that he had no time to react.
The light tore Xiao Mahai's sleeves in an instant, but it didn't touch his skin. Xiao Mahai's whole body seemed to suddenly become extremely illusory, and he directly widened the distance between him and Li Guangtu. The inconspicuous but extremely condensed sword light seemed to rush into nothingness. The space around Xiao Mahai was clearly distorted for a moment. The sword energy that Li Guangtu barely made melted rapidly in the distorted space. There was a breeze in the hall, and then it dissipated. Xiao Mahai, whose sleeves were completely torn, still held the cigarette. He smiled and said nothing, as if he had no fear or lingering fear. Every corner of Emperor Dong's palace was full of Li Tianlan's sword energy. This also meant that Li Tianlan was everywhere in Emperor Dong's palace. Naturally, this place was under his absolute control. Li Tianlan didn't bother to monitor the inside of Emperor Dong's palace, but he would naturally keep an eye on Li Guangtu. So he would pay attention to Xiao Mahai. So Xiao Mahai didn't show any mercy to Li Guangtu. He was indeed presumptuous. A dog who relied on his master's power to bully others. Xiao Mahai didn't care about this. He thought that he was Emperor Dong's lackey, so no matter what he did, as long as Li Tianlan didn't think it was inappropriate, no one could threaten him. "Look, you're anxious," Xiao Mahai said with a smile. Li Guangtu didn't speak. He took a deep look at Xiao Mahai, suddenly covered his mouth, and coughed violently. His injury, which had barely stabilized, seemed to break the balance again with his reluctance this time. Li Guangtu coughed crazily, and his lungs were torn apart. Xiao Mahai just looked at him, motionless, with indescribable indifference in his eyes. Li Guangtu coughed for nearly 3 minutes. His palms were full of blood, and a lot of blood froth flowed down his fingers, splashed on his clothes and flowed to the floor. Li Guangtu wiped the corner of his mouth with the other hand and clenched his fists. "Take him to Senior Yu." Li Tianlan's voice rang in their ears. Xiao Mahai suddenly stopped smiling and nodded. He looked at Li Guangtu and said with a smile, "General, please." He waved to a cleaner not far away and motioned for him to clean the floor. Then he turned around and took Li Guangtu to the other side of the elevator, which was rarely used. Li Guangtu suppressed all the emotions in his heart, expressionless, and said nothing. He already understood that his provocation was asking to be humiliated. In the case that he couldn't kill Xiao Mahai, he really couldn't beat the butler of Emperor Dong's palace in a quarrel. Xiao Mahai entered a string of passwords like a phone number in the elevator. Soon, an old but still energetic voice sounded in the elevator. "Who is it?" Li Guangtu's expression changed slightly. Xiao Mahai laughed and said, "Senior Yu, it's me. His Majesty asked me to take the general to you." The voice in the elevator paused, and then there was some doubt. "General?" "General Li Guangtu. He wants to see Mrs. Dongqing," Xiao Mahai said calmly. The other side of the elevator fell into silence. A few seconds later, Yu Donglai entered the password on his side. The elevator slowly descended and stopped at the 3rd floor underground. After the elevator door opened, the space of the 3rd floor underground was still separated from the space of the 3rd floor underground by a layer of extremely thick but extremely transparent glass. Yu Donglai stood outside the glass, looking at Li Guangtu in the elevator. The two looked at each other, and their eyes were extremely complicated. Xiao Mahai nodded to Yu Donglai. Yu Donglai pressed the button next to his hand, and the thick glass that could defend against rockets slowly opened to both sides. Yu Donglai didn't go in. Li Guangtu didn't come out. Xiao Mahai stood in the middle, purely treating himself as transparent. The atmosphere was indescribably awkward. After a long time, Li Guangtu smiled and took the initiative to break the silence. "Uncle Yu, long time no see." "How long did he say long time?" Yu Donglai's eyes were in a trance. It was more than 20 years since the last time they met. How many 20 years could there be in a lifetime? Yu Donglai took a deep breath, looked at Li Guangtu, and suddenly frowned. "Injured?" He knew that Li Guangtu had been injured when he was captured. But he also knew that during this time, Li Guangtu's injury had barely stabilized. Now Li Guangtu's breath was fluctuating, and his breathing was a little rapid and disordered, as if he had just been injured. "It's nothing." Li Guangtu smiled carelessly. "Uncle Yu, is it enough for us to talk about the old days?" Yu Donglai glanced at Xiao Mahai. Xiao Mahai touched his nose and said with a calm smile, "His Highness means to let Elder Yu lead the way and take General Li to see Mrs. Dongqing, and my role is to take General Li to see Elder Yu. Now that the task is completed, I should go up and report. Does Senior Yu have any instructions?" Yu Donglai sighed and shook his head. Li Guangtu walked out of the elevator and was silent. Xiao Mahai bowed slightly to Yu Donglai and took the elevator all the way up.
Li Guangtu and Yu Donglai talked about the old days. It sounded very sensitive, but there was nothing to doubt.
Yu Donglai's status in Emperor Dong's palace was extremely high, but he could not be regarded as a core figure in Emperor Dong's palace. His granddaughter, Yu Qingyan, could be regarded as a core figure in Emperor Dong's palace, but she was still very young and could not be regarded as a high-level figure. However, as one of Li Honghe's sacred guards, Yu Donglai's existence itself was special. Having an elder in the family was like having a treasure. It was not an exaggeration to say that Yu Donglai's existence was one of the foundations of Emperor Dong's palace. Not to mention Ning Qianqing's future position in Emperor Dong's palace. Not to mention the relationship between Ning Qianqing and Yu Qingyan. Just from the fact that Yu Donglai occasionally cooked a table of dishes for them when he was in a good mood, it could be seen that Li Tianlan trusted him.
Xiao Mahai naturally had no place to suspect a person who could directly contact with His Majesty's diet. The elevator went all the way up to the ground floor. The elevator door opened slowly. Xiao Mahai, who was about to go out, looked up and suddenly froze. Outside the door stood a languid and casual figure in simple casual attire. He was quiet and cold.
Xiao Mahai bowed subconsciously and said respectfully, "Madam,
you just did a good job."
Qin Weibai smiled, and her voice was full of appreciation.
Xiao Mahai shook his head silently. "Come out," Qin Weibai said.
Xiao Mahai nodded and walked out of the elevator. Qin Weibai didn't say much and walked into the elevator alone. The elevator door closed and went all the way down.
Chapter 1268. Rows of Medicine Cabinets. Biological specimens soaked in liquid were neatly arranged. All kinds of poisonous creatures kept in glass cabinets.
The flowers of the grotesque plants that had been cultivated.
High-end test tables. Densely packed experimental equipment. Gloomy, cold, depressing and gloomy. This was the third underground floor of Emperor Dong's palace. The territory of Yu Donglai the poison doctor. Everything was the same as before.
There was almost no difference except that the equipment was more advanced and the number of various specimens was more.
It was like the original laboratory that belonged to Yu Donglai more than 20 years ago. Li Guangtu looked around with some nostalgia and was in high spirits.
He sat on the sofa in the middle of the laboratory, with a lot of useful and useless data recorded by Yu Donglai on the desk in front of him.
It's almost the same as before. Li Guangtu chuckled and said, "Uncle Yu, I still remember the first time I entered your laboratory. I was 13 years old. I rushed in with a smile and ran out crying. You also ran out with me. As for me, I only cared about crying when I rushed out, while you were almost paralyzed with fear.
If it weren't for the security guards of the laboratory who rushed in quickly to deal with the aftermath, I guess you wouldn't even have rushed into your own laboratory."
"How dare you say that? If it weren't for your dirty hands at that time, I wouldn't have had such a psychological shadow." Yu Donglai laughed and scolded. He shook his head and sighed. "Since then when I see that thing, I'm not afraid but I feel weak all over. It's not like in reality. Even on TV, or when I see those pictures or those toys, I have a feeling of numbness on my scalp and a cold sweat all over my body. Now when I watch TV alone and occasionally see that kind of scene, I shiver, and my heart can't stand it anymore." He picked up a large water cup and filled half a cup of hot water from the water dispenser to cool. Then he opened a few medicine cabinets, took out a few herbs that emitted a strange smell, and crushed them. He was weighing the amount. While busy he asked casually, "How about you?" "I'm not well either." Li Guangtu smiled bitterly. "Usually, I'm even more serious than you. Occasionally I dream about it. After waking up, I don't dare to sleep again. Even when I close my eyes and think of those things, I have to hypnotize myself to forget it. Psychological shadow. It's almost a fatal weakness for me." After a pause he continued, "But fortunately, I have some achievements in the spiritual domain. After my martial arts were crippled, it could be considered as a different path. However, my spiritual power is different from that of the sanctuary. It can be considered as a different application of the way of the sword. It's hard to achieve the silent effect, but it's not a problem for me to hypnotize myself. So in this aspect, I can barely overcome it." "That's good." Yu Donglai lowered his head and continued to fiddle with various crushed powders. He chuckled and said, "So, I'm really not a qualified poison doctor." He shook his head, as if he wanted to get rid of some images deep in his memory. That year, Li Kuang-tu, at the age of 13, entered his lab for the first time. He observed all kinds of living specimens in his lab with great interest, but he was scared by a poisonous snake in the window and accidentally knocked over the window. Li Kuang-tu was so scared that he cried and ran out of the lab. However, he didn't expect that Yu Donglai, who was known as a poison doctor, was so scared that his face turned pale and he couldn't even stand steadily. Yu Donglai was afraid of snakes. This was a secret that few people knew. It was also because of his fear that he kept that thing in his lab in order to avoid being found out by others. He didn't even touch it on normal days. It was a joke that someone who played with poisons was afraid of this thing. But Yu Donglai was really afraid. This kind of fear could even be said to be a psychological disease. It was not the fear or disgust ordinary people had, but a kind of fear that would make one's whole body stiff, face pale, scalp numb, and blood flow backward after seeing it. It was a fear that overwhelmed all reason. Except for this thing, Yu Donglai had never been afraid of anything in his life. And that farce also left a deep psychological shadow on Li Kuang-tu. Over the years, no matter where and when, as long as he saw it, he would not hesitate to completely smash it with sword energy. Also, after that time, Yu Donglai simply stopped pretending and never kept that thing again. Even if he needed to study it, he would send people to extract the poison. If he could avoid looking at it, he would absolutely not look at it. This is not a weakness. In terms of poison, in the whole dark world, Uncle Yu can be said to be in existence at the level of the ancestor. Li Kuang-tu said with a smile. Yu Donglai shook his head and poured all kinds of powder he had made together into the cup. Originally, there was only half a cup of hot water, but in an instant, there was no heat. The white water in the cup turned into a strange pale green and began to bubble. Yu Donglai picked up the cup and put it in front of Li Kuang-tu, saying, "Drink it." Li Kuang-tu looked at the cup of green liquid and watched it become more and more viscous. He frowned slightly and did not speak. "Do you not trust my skill? Or do you not trust me?" Yu Donglai picked up some powder residue and asked without looking back. "No." Li Kuang-tu shook his head. "I still say the same thing that I said many times in the past. This thing looks really King disgusting. Uncle Yu, you are not particular. Don't talk nonsense. I want to be particular. It's not a problem to make you a cup of colorful cocktails. But are you healing or enjoying it? If you think it's disgusting, don't drink it. If you have the ability, don't get hurt. Just treat it as I am willing to serve you." It was exactly the same scolding as in the past. It was exactly the same tone as in the past. Li Kuang-tu's eyes were in a trance for a moment. When the Li family was still in its heyday, he was young and vigorous and made rapid progress in martial arts. But he was often injured. He fought with others and his own people, honed himself and fought with others. Every time he was injured, he rarely went to the hospital. Usually, he went directly to Yu Donglai. Yu Donglai was known as the poison doctor. He was the ancestor of playing with poisons and could also be regarded as the ancestor of healing. Every time, Yu Donglai would give him a cup of green and disgusting thing to heal his wounds. It looked extremely ugly, but the effect was really effective. And every time, Li Kuang-tu was a little resistant. Yu Donglai had been forcing him to drink it and even threatened to pour the green thing on his head. Li Kuang-tu smiled bitterly, shook his head, picked up the cup, and drank up the green liquid in front of him. Yu Donglai looked at him silently. When he finished drinking, he suddenly asked, "Kuang-tu, tell me the truth. Did you come down this time to see Ruzhui or to find an old man like me?" Chapter 1269. Li Kuang-tu heard Yu Donglai's voice. But he didn't answer, because he didn't have time to care. He didn't know if the green viscous liquid was a familiar formula, but it was definitely a familiar taste. It was cold in the mouth, warm in the throat, and spicy in the abdomen. It was like a flame suddenly burning in the deepest part of his body. His blood seemed to be completely evaporated. The hot temperature penetrated into his skin from his internal organs, burning his pores and hair all over his body. The strong pain came roaring and almost drowned his reason. Li Kuang-tu trembled all over and tightly grasped the edge of the table in front of him. Sweat oozed from his forehead and flowed quickly down his face drop by drop. Yu Donglai opened the drawer under the desk, took out a cigarette, lit it, and sent it to Li Kuang-tu's mouth. Li Kuang-tu's mouth kept twitching, and he shook his head slowly and laboriously. He was seriously injured. Under such pain, he didn't even have the strength to lift his hand, let alone smoke. Yu Donglai put the cigarette in his mouth and smoked it slowly. He was a poison doctor. He was good at killing people and saving people. His method of killing was silent, and he could make people die happy, but his method of saving people was cruel and overbearing, and he could make people hover between life and death. This could also be considered as his bad taste. What he gave Li Guangtu was poison, which could be regarded as his exclusive formula. If the amount of this poison was large, it was enough to completely melt the internal organs of the human body in an instant. If it was concentrated and ignited, it was enough to destroy a city. However, if the dosage of this poison was precise and small to a certain extent, drinking it would greatly stimulate the potential of the human body, quickly repair a series of injuries in the body, and speed up the recovery speed. The effect could be said to be immediate. As for the poison contained in it, with the physical quality of a warrior, such a small amount could be completely ignored. The only bad thing was that it was very uncomfortable to drink it. Yu Donglai did it on purpose. It was a wicked hobby of his for many years. Li Guangtu sat there, trembling and twitching for nearly 5 minutes before he slowly recovered. The severe pain and burning feeling came and went quickly. The cold sweat on his forehead quickly faded, and his pale face also recovered a little color. He was obviously much more energetic. He trembled and took a deep breath, then laughed and said in a hoarse voice, "Uncle, the old man said that this is your specialty, and you can make it milder." This was more than just a unique skill. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the recipe for this kind of thing was priceless. Yu Donglai only played with poison and didn't join any biological laboratory, but the effect of this thing was no less than most gene medicines. Needless to say, it could have an effect on people in Li Guangtu's realm, which could instantly beat countless gene medicines. Li Guangtu's current state was very poor, but after drinking this thing, his mental state had obviously improved a little. Although he was still 108,000 miles away from recovery, at least now, he had the ability to barely make a move. If he chose to recuperate quietly, this spirit would pass after a few hours. After all, it was to stimulate his potential to recover, and he would also fall into a period of weakness for more than 10 hours. At that time, he would be extremely tired and sleepy. But after the period of weakness, his injury would recover faster again. Until the effect of the medicine was completely gone, he would drink the second cup, and so on. According to his current situation, it would probably only take about a month for his injury to recover to the state before the siege. Although that state was still seriously injured, at least it would not be as embarrassing as it was now. Moreover, this poison liked the cold and was easy to solidify. If it was made into sugar and carried on the body, it would be a life-saving thing in some cases, even for an expert like Li Guangtu. What was more terrifying was that this thing could be used on Li Guangtu. If the dosage was reduced again, it could naturally be used on ordinary elites. It could save lives and recover. In a desperate situation, when the ammunition and food were exhausted, this thing could be gathered together and ignited. After the release of the highly toxic gas reached a certain concentration, it could also kill a lot of people. The most important thing was that this poison took effect very quickly. Even if there was an antidote, it might not be in time. Moreover, the production of one of the main medicinal materials in the antidote was not much, which meant that there would not be too many antidotes. But it was not difficult to accumulate this poison. In addition to the trouble of making it, it was said that most of the materials were very common. What was a poison doctor? As a poison doctor who was once famous in the dark world and once the sacred guard of the god of war of Jianghu state, Yu Donglai, in his heyday, was not an invincible realm expert, but his influence was more terrifying than that of an ordinary invincible realm expert. Of course, he had more than this unique skill. But even if he only had this skill, he could easily become a core high-level member if he joined any superpower. There is indeed a way to make it milder, but the taste is not right. I studied for a long time before I found this kind of medicinal material that can make people extremely painful. Every time I make this thing, if I don't add some of this, I always feel that I'm making something else. It's not beautiful. Not beautiful. Yu Donglai shook his head and sighed. Li Guangtu looked at him thoughtfully and said with a smile, "Maybe so. If I didn't feel pain just now, I would also feel that I was drinking something else." Over the years, when some old brothers were injured, they would inevitably mention Uncle Yu. "Do you remember Daybreak? He has nagged me many times." "Daybreak?" Yu Donglai smiled and said. He's a good boy. Unfortunately, it's hard to turn back with you. Why should we turn back? Li Kuangtu shook his head and said, whether it's me or Daybreak, we don't think we've done anything wrong. I'm from the Li family, and I want to take back what belongs to me. What's wrong? Yu Donglai took a drag on his cigarette.
After a moment of silence he asked, where is the Li family?
Li Kuangtu.
Yu Donglai waved his hand and said softly, the Li family has been destroyed by you. You destroyed it more than 20 years ago.
From this point of view, Li Kuangtu nodded and said, it's true. Winner takes all. I couldn't lose that year, and I couldn't afford to lose. Since I lost, it's wrong. There's nothing to say. But no one blames you. Yu Donglai said lightly, winner takes all. That's life. No one can help it. But since you lost, you have to admit it. Even if you're wrong, you have to admit it. You said you want to take back what belongs to you. Kuangtu, what else do you have except yourself? Everything in the Li family was destroyed by you. Now what's left of the Li family is what His Highness has guarded for more than 20 years. You say it's yours? Why? Did His Highness give it to you? Those, including the current purgatory of Heaven Capital, are what His Highness left to Tianlan. It's understandable that he didn't give it to you. But you can't rob it, let alone unite with outsiders to rob it. What you're doing now is capricious. You're suffering for yourself and the Li family. Look at the current Emperor Dong's palace and Tianlan. Kuangtu, don't you understand? I don't support you robbing, but I can barely understand what you're doing. This is capricious. You think it's yours, but in fact, the Li family belongs to His Highness. You haven't even been the patriarch of the Li family. Why do you say the Li family is yours? If it's not yours, you still want to rob it. Isn't that the logic of robbers? Well, you can rob it, but what about now? Can you rob it? Is the purgatory of Heaven Capital stronger than Emperor Dong's palace? Or are you stronger than Tianlan? No, neither. You can be dissatisfied. You can rob it. But it's meaningless to struggle when you can't rob it.
When you and Tianlan, no, when you struggle away the relationship between the Li family and Tianlan, it will be hard for you to keep your life, not to mention owning the Li family.
Li Kuangtu took a drag on his cigarette and remained silent. Yu Donglai's voice was very steady and calm. Although it was unpleasant to hear, it was not unacceptable. But it was just acceptable.
Li Kuangtu shook off the ash and said in a deep voice, Uncle Yu, you and I both know very well that Li Tianlan's surname is not Li.
I know. Yu Donglai nodded. But to put it bluntly, what does it have to do with you? Everything in the purgatory of Heaven Capital belongs to your father. You do have the right to inherit it, but your father also has the right not to give it to you. Your surname is Li, and you and His Highness are father and son, but he doesn't want to hand over the last power of the Li family to you. That's his business. It seems natural for a son to inherit his father's business, but you failed. Your father doesn't agree with you inheriting the power of the Li family. This is his attitude. Is it wrong for him to disagree? Li Kuangtu's voice was angry. You're the one who's confused. Yu Donglai's voice also became cold. I'm confused if I don't hand it over to you? Ridiculous. I'm confused if I hand it over to you. What can you do? Take these old assets and gamble again? The Li family and the Wang family have been friends for hundreds of years. You shed this layer of cordiality, and the Wang family fought back. You lost. You're not convinced, so you insist on robbing it? Can you? Look at what you've done in your life. The purgatory of Heaven Capital is now in your hands. What have you done? You can't rob it from Tianlan, but you can rob it from the Wang family? Not to mention Wang Tianzong. Can you solve it even if Wang Xianxia is there? I still say the same thing. The purgatory of Heaven Capital is your father's property. He can give it to you or not. It's his thing. Whatever he says, it's his thing. What he wants to give it to Tianlan, even if there is no Tianlan, he will dismiss all the masters of the Li family and donate all his wealth to charity. What does that have to do with you? What's your father's property must be yours. What the fuck is this logic? He gave birth to you and raised you. Does he owe you? What's his is yours only if he gives it to you. If he doesn't give it to you, you can't rob it. As a son, don't you understand this? Li Kuangtu's breathing was a little short.
Yu Donglai was silent for a while and waved his hand tiredly.
Kuang-tu, I don't want to say anything unpleasant, but you should think about it yourself.
What's the point of doing this now, except for your own dissatisfaction?
Li Kuang-tu was completely silent. He didn't want to explain anything, and he couldn't explain anything. Xiao Mahai directly exposed his posture that he had been holding.
Yu Donglai, with a little anger, made him realize the reality. He knew what they said made sense.
He really knew. He couldn't compete with Li Tianlan.
That was the truth. He teamed up with Gu Xingyun and Jiang Shangyu to occupy part of the power of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou state. He still had a chance.
But the fact was that he couldn't compete with Li Tianlan alone. Li Tianlan's offer to him still echoed in his ears. It was a tempting condition that he couldn't accept. He didn't want to tell Yu Donglai what Li Huaqing would do after he agreed. Anyway, it was an excuse. If he joined Emperor Dong's palace, Li Huaqing would inevitably respond. But sometimes, he and the Li family were two different things.
The patriarch of the Li family, everything of the Li family, the peak of the Li family. That was what he had been pursuing and what he wanted to do most in his life. But now, except for the die-hard supporters of the purgatory of heaven capital, who else in the world would regard him and the Li family as one?
No one would think so, and Li Huaqing naturally wouldn't. His joining Emperor Dong's palace would touch Li Huaqing's bottom line, but he was the only one who joined. Perhaps daybreak would also be added. But it was not something that couldn't be avoided. From the perspective of the Li family, there were many ways to compromise and make concessions. But Li Kuang-tu didn't choose. He knew that he couldn't compete with Li Tianlan. But he wouldn't admit it.
Whether he was naive or shameless or selfish, ignorant, or paranoid. Whatever he said.
But this was him. It can't change anything.
Li Kuang-tu whispered. Uncle Yu, I've made up my mind.
Li Tianlan is not a Li after all. The Li family's hundreds of years of foundation can't be given to others. Yu Donglai laughed out loud. In the dark laboratory, it was a series of chuckles. If you said this before, some people would believe it. He whispered. But now, including those elites of the Li family who stand by you because of Tianlan's background in the purgatory of heaven capital, how many will believe it? Rushi is still in a coma, but her condition is not bad. She will wake up in a few years. She is Tianlan's woman. Their future children, whether boys or girls, will inherit everything of the Li family. We cannot talk about whether His Highness handed the Li family over to you or Tianlan's background. But can you say that the child of your own daughter is not a member of the Li family? Can you say that he is an outsider? Li Kuang-tu opened his mouth. The anger in Yu Donglai's eyes was almost tangible. If you dare to say that he is an outsider, I dare to slap you. I will slap you now. Do you believe it? Li Kuang-tu shut up. His eyes were a little gloomy, but he did not speak. Yu Donglai's strength was nothing in his eyes. He was really seriously injured now. But he drank what Yu Donglai gave him and stimulated his potential. His body was now in a state of excitement after being seriously injured. He could barely make a sword move. If Yu Donglai was well prepared and given enough time, environment, and terrain, he could indeed achieve even more terrifying damage than Li Kuang-tu. But now, at such a close distance, facing Yu Donglai, whose state was declining and who was no longer in the thunder-shocking realm, Li Kuang-tu's current sword move was enough to kill him dozens of times in an instant. However, there were many things that did not depend solely on strength. He could dislike Li Tianlan and want to kill him. But Yu Donglai. He was a close guard who followed Li Honghe. He was one of the few senior members of the Li family who had watched him grow up. He could refuse to obey Li Honghe. But Yu Donglai really did not owe him anything. He called him Uncle Yu willingly and naturally. Now standing in front of him was an elder of the Li family. If the elder really wanted to beat him, Li Kuang-tu could not fight back and could only accept it. Well, even if my grandson is not an outsider, Li Kuang-tu moved his body and said in a hoarse voice, but who can guarantee that Li Tianlan will keep his word? Uncle Yu, you should know better than me how much Li Tianlan dotes on that witch. His and Rushi's child will inherit the Li family? Can't that witch get pregnant? His and Rushi's child is the future patriarch of the Li family. Then what should the child of him and that witch do in the future? Can she be reconciled? If she is not reconciled, what will she do? Emperor Dong's palace will be the dynasty of the dark world in the future. The scene is no worse than the ancient fight for the throne. If that witch wants to support her child, hey, I don't look down on Emperor Dong's palace, but if she wants to fight, who in Emperor Dong's palace can beat her? Qin Wei Bai, Moon God, and Wang Yuetong. Do you think Li Tianlan can treat them equally? Uncle Yu, do you believe that? I don't know. Yu Donglai said lightly. He was telling the truth. In Emperor Dong's palace, Li Tianlan trusted him very much, and Qin Wei Bai was also very familiar with him. However, even Li Tianlan and Qin Wei Bai hadn't thought about what Li Guangtu said. How could they tell him this? He shook his head and said slowly, in a few months after the election, the new group will be established. Emperor Dong's palace will be no worse than the Li family at its peak, or even stronger. The most important thing is that Tianlan is young, and Emperor Dong's palace has just begun. Guangtu, you know what this means. So it's true that the Li family is Emperor Dong's palace. But if you say that Emperor Dong's palace is the Li family, then many people will not be convinced. You want to fight for the throne and kill each other. Have you watched too many TV dramas or history books? How much of what Emperor Dong's palace has now is brought by little Bai? That's her dowry. Even if I have the cheek to say that she gave her dowry to Tianlan and Rushi's child instead of her own child, do you think it's appropriate? The current Emperor Dong's palace is a combination of the Li family and the Samsara palace. To put it bluntly, because of you, the proportion of the Li family in Emperor Dong's palace is far less than that of the Samsara palace. The lord of Emperor Dong's palace can naturally afford a Li family head. If that day comes, Tianlan and Rushi's child will inherit the Li family, but not the position of lord of Emperor Dong's palace. It's true that Tianlan spoils little Bai, but I think she deserves all this. And I know her better than you do. There are really not many women who can be so generous. Even if that day comes, little Bai doesn't want the family business, the Li family, and things that don't belong to her. Your way of thinking is too extreme. You always think that with a big family and a big business, there will be a tragedy in the future when it comes to the successor. How can you be so sure that the next generation of Emperor Dong's palace will be separated from Xiao Bai's child? Can't they see that it's a win-win situation? Yu Donglai took a deep look at Li Guangtu. The most important thing is that little Bai has been with Tianlan all the time. With her means, can't she play with a few children? Is it difficult for her to make them like brothers? Li Guangtu wanted to say Huawu. Not only the current Huawu. And Huawu, who had died in the final battle in Heaven Capital. It couldn't change anything at all. Yu Donglai was indeed an elder, but he couldn't make decisions. Besides, he didn't have evidence. Even if he had evidence, so what? Li Tianlan didn't kill him, and Yu Donglai wouldn't stand up for him. Anyway, thank you, Uncle Yu, for the potion today. Feeling that his body was much better than before, Li Guangtu said silently. Anyway, you are the son of His Highness. You still have to be dignified when you come to Emperor Dong's palace. Even if you leave, how can you look so sick? Yu Donglai shook his head. I wanted to persuade Uncle Yu to go with me, but it seems that there is no need to say it. Li Guangtu smiled self-deprecatingly. If he could take Yu Donglai away today, then this experience of being captured would definitely be a great gain. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he had made a lot of money. Yu Donglai's means of playing with poison were secondary. He was Li Honghe's close guard. For today's Li family, this identity alone could be said to be a shining signboard. Although Li Guangtu had no contact with the outside world, he could roughly imagine his current situation. Moreover, Li Tianlan went to the headquarters of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital today to give him a live broadcast, which let him directly see the hearts of many people in the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. People's hearts were scattered. It was naturally difficult to lead the team. This could not be said to be Li Guangtu's miscalculation. It could only be said that he underestimated Li Tianlan's strength. In the absence of Wu Qing's energy, he really did not expect that he, Jiang Shangyu, and Gu Xingyun would be no match for Li Tianlan. If he could kill Li Tianlan in the siege, even if the Li family and the Purgatory of Heaven Capital were dissatisfied with his cooperation with Gu Xingyun, Li Tianlan would be dead after all, and Li Guangtu would have a lot of room to maneuver. But now, not only did Li Tianlan not die, but he was even captured by Li Tianlan and brought back to Emperor Dong's palace. In this way, first he cooperated with Gu Xingyun, a life-and-death enemy, to deal with the heir of the Li family, and then he and Li Tianlan were determined.
In the purgatory of heaven capital, the people's hearts were inevitably unstable. At this time, if he could persuade Yu Donglai to go with him, it would play a great role in appeasing the people in the purgatory of heaven capital. And the most important thing was, after realizing that he was no match for Li Tianlan, Yu Donglai became more important. At Li Tianlan's level of strength, he almost did not need to be afraid of death, because there were very few things that could kill him. Why was Jianghu state so afraid of Li Tianlan? It was because it was difficult to really threaten Li Tianlan's life unless in some special circumstances. And once they fell out, as long as Li Tianlan was alive, it would be Jianghu state that would suffer terribly. High-tech weapons could flatten the entire Emperor Dong's palace in an instant, but it was still too difficult to kill Li Tianlan. At this stage of personal strength, if Li Tianlan really had nothing to worry about, it was enough to hurt Jianghu state when he went crazy. And Yu Donglai happened to have something that could pose a fatal threat to Li Tianlan. If Li Guangtu shook his head violently, Yu Donglai's attitude was obvious. Such an attitude meant that there were no ifs. Sure enough, Yu Donglai directly said, "I'm old, I can't walk, and I don't want to. I can't persuade you to turn back, but I can't follow you into the pit." Again, Guangtu, you have to admit your mistakes. If you do this, not only will it not benefit the Li family, but it will completely harm the Li family. Of course, if the Li family has no weight in your heart, and it's just an excuse for you to continue to struggle, then forget what I said. If that's the case, it's useless to say more. I like the current Li family and the current Emperor Dong's palace very much. Ning showed me the plan of Shenyuan City and Tiannan some time ago. I also like it very much in the future. I have no regrets if I can be buried here in the future. Li Guangtu nodded silently. He suddenly smiled and said with some reluctance, "Ning, is he your grandson-in-law?"
Yes.
Yu Donglai suddenly became spirited.
That boy is not bad. He is very attentive to Qing Yan. He can be counted as a support in the future.
He paused and shook his head with some regret. These two children were ready to get married when they just graduated more than 2 years ago. Then they were caught up in the mess in Snow Country, and then Tianlan went to the desert. He just took charge of Shenyuan City and was delayed again. Now there are a lot of messy things. If they get married, it is estimated that they will get married after the election. Good things are strewn with setbacks. Li Guangtu whispered. I hope so. Yu Donglai smiled and said, "That boy has a good temper, but his talent in martial arts is a little poor. Let alone the invincible realm, it seems that he has no chance to enter the thunder-shocking realm." Li Guangtu smiled and understood that Yu Donglai was being modest and showing off. He had never seen Ning Qianqing, but he was very familiar with the name. When Li Tianlan first started out, there were 3 people around him at the beginning, not including Qin Weibai. Ning Qianqing, who was deliberately arranged by Dongqing Wudi to be around Li Tianlan. Yu Qingyan, who knew Li Tianlan's background. Li Beitian, who was led to the Sky Academy by Saint. They were the first people to follow Li Tianlan. Among the 3 people, Yu Qingyan's current status in Emperor Dong's palace was special, but it was not important. When she entered the Sky Academy, she was only in the ice-condensing realm. Now a few years later, she had just entered the fire-flaming realm. In Emperor Dong's palace, she was a high-level official, but she did not hold any specific position. It seemed that Li Tianlan put her in that position because of their past friendship. But in fact, Yu Qingyan did not seem important because Yu Donglai was still there. She did not focus on martial arts at all. Instead, she followed Yu Donglai to accept his heritage of poison doctor. In the future, when Yu Donglai was gone, Yu Qingyan would be the new generation of poison doctor. She controlled something that Li Guangtu coveted, something that could pose a fatal threat to Li Tianlan, and the Tree of Life plan that the Li family had studied for hundreds of years. Such a position could be said to be the most important in Emperor Dong's palace. In addition to Yu Qingyan, Ning Qianqing and Li Beitian also had their own opportunities. Li Beitian's talent in martial arts was recognized by everyone. Great Void Sword Master of the half-step invincible realm before the age of 30, his future prospects could be said to be limitless. Among the young generation of Jianghu state today, Li Beitian was firmly ranked in the top 5, including Li Tianlan, the Rain on the River, and Wang Xianxia. Great Void Sword Intent of Mount Shu did not have anything unusual at the beginning of martial arts. Instead, it paid too much attention to the foundation. Sometimes it seemed very ordinary, but the higher it went, the more terrifying it was. After the thunder-shocking realm, Great Void Sword Intent began to exert its power. Li Batian had been advancing like a hot knife through butter these years, until the present half-step invincible realm, and he had never stopped. Judging from his age, as long as there were no accidents, Li Batian would at least be at the peak of the invincible realm in the future. He could definitely be said to be one of the cards of Emperor Dong's palace in the future. His path was already very clear. As long as he could cross the threshold of the invincible realm, the position of Deputy Palace Master of Emperor Dong's palace was inevitable. Even now, he could be said to be one of the core members of Emperor Dong's palace. Compared with Li Batian, Ning Qianqing's aptitude was not good, but his ability was not in martial arts. Judging from the current scale of Emperor Dong's palace, to be honest, Li Tianlan did not need a genius in martial arts. Emperor Dong's palace had never been short of geniuses in this aspect. On the contrary, he needed a leader who could see the overall situation. For example, the current military advisor. Another example was Li Huazhong of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. There was also Ning Qianqing, the first mayor of Shenyuan City. What this position represented was self-evident. Sitting in this position meant that as long as Emperor Dong's palace was not destroyed in the future, Ning Qianqing's future would be at least at the level of a counselor. There were already signs of it. After today, the Purgatory of Heaven capital would become the Purgatory Legion, and the Purgatory of Heaven capital would naturally leave Tiannan. Emperor Dong's palace had swept away the chaotic forces in another city, and in Tiannan, his only remaining opponent was the Burning Legion. Opponent? No, at most it was not an eyesore. Once the Burning Legion retreats from Tiannan, the entire Tiannan will fall. It would fall into the hands of Emperor Dong's palace and become the most stable foundation for Li Tianlan. After taking over the Tiannan region, the Flourishing Age Fund invested a large amount of money in the region. The Tiannan region was reorganized. Because of the existence of Emperor Dong's palace, the region was destined to develop rapidly. Before the general election at the latest, there would be only Emperor Dong's palace left in Tiannan. Then, in 3 to 5 years at the right time, Li Tianlan would formally propose to merge Tiannan into Jianghu state and completely dig up this land of more than 40,000 square kilometers that belonged to Annan. At that time, Tiannan would become Tiannan province of Jianghu state. And as the current mayor of Shenyuan City, Ning Qianqing would also become a very high-ranking provincial speaker among the governors of Jianghu state. In this way, he was only one step away from becoming a counselor. This step, whether it was 5 or 10 years, could definitely be crossed. As long as he crossed it, Ning Qianqing would become the leader of the new group and the real right-hand man of Li Tianlan. The road had been paved, and the future was extremely bright. With such a bright future in front of him, what was a talent in martial arts? I really envy you, Uncle Yu. Li Guangtu laughed. His laugh was very polite, and he was very far away. What a pity. Yu Donglai said softly, it seems that when they get married, they probably can't invite you to the wedding banquet. Li Guangtu said yes. It was not only him. In the Purgatory of Heaven capital, many people who were familiar with Yu Donglai and Yu Donglai could not attend the wedding banquet. Indeed, Emperor Dong's palace is very good. Since Uncle Yu has settled down here, I can understand that you don't want to leave. Your grandson-in-law has a bright future, and your granddaughter is also very valued. You live a comfortable life. With the support of the Flourishing Age Fund, Tiannan will certainly have a good future. If it were me, I would also like to stay here and don't want to leave. Li Guangtu said slowly. It's more than that. Yu Donglai looked at Li Guangtu and smiled. I really like it here. Similarly, I don't like you very much. I don't agree with what you are doing now. If I don't agree, I naturally won't leave. Guangtu, I watched you grow up, and we have known each other for many years. But now, you and I are on different paths, and we don't agree with each other. There is no need to talk about the rest. Li Guangtu sat in silence. After a long time he laughed. Shall I take you to see Rushi? Yu Donglai took the initiative to ask. Obviously, he was ready to end the so-called catching up. It's Moon God. Li Guangtu insisted. Dongqing Rushi. Moon Godly. 2 names, 2 personalities, with completely different meanings. Yu Donglai didn't take it seriously. He just nodded, turned around and said,
Let's go. Li Guangtu didn't move.
He narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, Uncle Yu, there is one more thing.
Yu Donglai was not surprised. He slowly turned around, looked at Li Guangtu, and sighed softly.
So, you came down this time mainly to see me?
If he just came to see Rushi, then they should be in the biological laboratory of Emperor Dong's palace now, looking at the body data related to Dongqing Rushi. But not now. In his laboratory. It was Li Guangtu who proposed to catch up. Yu Donglai knew Li Guangtu very well. At least it was more than 20 years ago. So when he took the initiative to talk about the old days, he understood something. It was true to see Rushi, but Li Guangtu must have something to ask him to do.
Half and half.
Li Guangtu said blandly. I told Li Tianlan that I came to see Rushi. If I didn't see you in the process, I would tell Li Tianlan to let you meet me. Do you think Tianlan will agree at that time? Yu Donglai said playfully. If you came to visit normally, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now that you are a captive, it's normal for you to see your daughter. You can see whoever you want. Don't you have any temper? If it's someone else, it's hard to say. Li Guangtu raised the corner of his mouth. But if it's someone from the Li family, as long as he is in Emperor Dong's palace, I can see whoever I want, and Li Tianlan won't refuse. He can be said to be immature, but his pride is no worse than mine. Now he has the victory in hand. If I want to see the old people of the Li family, he still hides, which proves his mood. So as long as I want to see them, he doesn't care. Because now the situation is clear, he has nothing to worry about. You also know that the situation is clear.
Yu Donglai said blandly.
I know. Li Guangtu nodded. But I won't admit it. In order to deny this result, I will continue to work hard. Although Uncle Yu, you definitely don't like to hear this, it's the truth, and it's what I'm going to do next. So, Yu Donglai remained calm. So, I also want a drop of cardinal blood and dark armor scale. Li Huaqing's voice was calm. Cardinal, dark armor, tree of life. This was the core heritage of the Li family. An experiment that had lasted for hundreds of years. The tree of life was not mature yet. But Red Sparrow dark armor could already play a role. Red Sparrow was the hottest poison. Dark armor was the coldest poison. When Red Sparrow's blood and dark armor scale were mixed together to make a poison, the poison's lethality to any creature was almost unlimited. This was definitely something that could pose a fatal threat to Li Tianlan. Not to mention him now, even if Li Tianlan really became the chosen one, this poison could also kill him or completely destroy him. Red Sparrow dark armor and Tree of Life had always been in Yu Donglai's hands. Even when Li Honghe went to the border, he didn't take these three things with him. Instead, he left them to Yu Donglai to study. And now, Li Guangtu came to him, asking for Red Sparrow's blood and dark armor scale. It went without saying what he was going to do and who he was going to deal with. Other people, even Jiang Shangyu and Wang Shangxiao, were not worthy of Li Guangtu using this kind of thing. Yu Donglai stood there quietly, looking at Li Guangtu with no expression. Li Guangtu looked at him. He didn't give in. That's not yours. Yu Donglai repeated the old tune. I know. Li Guangtu still didn't flinch, but looked into Yu Donglai's eyes. But Uncle Yu, it's not yours either. Yu Donglai frowned. Li Tianlan knows dark armor and Red Sparrow? Li Guangtu asked. I don't know if he knows. Yu Donglai felt a little helpless. From the perspective of a leader, Li Tianlan was sometimes ridiculously lazy. The specific situation he showed was that he was really willing to delegate power and didn't care about anything. He liked to be a hands-off boss. Yu Donglai had told him about the black-armored Red Sparrow once and even handed the information to Li Tianlan. He could be sure that Li Tianlan didn't read the information at all. As for whether he remembered it or not, Yu Donglai didn't know. I only need a drop of blood and a scale. Li Guangtu looked at Yu Donglai with sincere eyes. You can say that it's because of the past friendship or the current deal. As long as Uncle Yu can help me, there is no condition that can't be negotiated. Purgatory of Heaven Capital plus Li Guangtu. Even if this lineup was not as good as Emperor Dong's palace. But such a deal was also a very tempting thing. Yu Donglai smiled. Okay, send your son to Emperor Dong's palace. Let him recognize Tianlan as his foster father.
and draw a clear line with Purgatory of Heaven capital. I can give you what you want. Foster father. Although Hua Wu was young, in terms of seniority, he was only Li Tianlan's younger brother. The anger in Li Guangtu's eyes suddenly rose, and he said in a deep voice, Uncle Yu, are you kidding?
Aren't you also kidding?
Yu Donglai said coldly, just like the condition I put forward, you and I both know that it's impossible. The Red Sparrow dark armor is something that can hurt Tianlan. I now live in Emperor Dong's palace. My granddaughter will be the core of Emperor Dong's palace in the future, and my grandson-in-law will be a senior member of Emperor Dong's palace. Guangtu, tell me, which thing around me has nothing to do with Emperor Dong's palace? You want to deal with Tianlan, and you even want to use the thing that you made a deal with me to deal with Tianlan.
Is your uncle a typical traitor in your eyes? The corner of Li Guangtu's mouth moved. Say no more.
Yu Donglai's voice was cold.
Don't think about it.
The Red Sparrow dark armor is indeed in my hands, but I can tell you that as long as I am alive, I will not give it to you.
It's not mine, but the research right is with me. I can guarantee that I will not use it to deal with you.
He slowly turned around and walked to the elevator.
Are you coming? Li Guangtu wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He really wanted to find Yu Donglai today. But he did not expect to persuade Yu Donglai to join him. Advance in order to retreat. His real purpose was the Red Sparrow blood and the dark armor scale. This was what he had been thinking about after he knew that he was held captive in Emperor Dong's palace. Because it was indeed something that could pose a fatal threat to Li Tianlan. Therefore, he thought for a long time and prepared a lot of excuses. But he did not expect that as soon as he started, Yu Donglai would directly refuse and leave no room for negotiation. Yu Donglai walked to the elevator without looking back. Li Guangtu stood up with no expression on his face and followed him. Yu Donglai entered the password for the elevator to go down. While waiting for the other end of the elevator to enter the password, Yu Donglai said calmly, I still say the same thing. Your struggle now is really meaningless. The Red Sparrow dark armor is indeed something that can hurt Tianlan. But now, something should be different from what you think. Yu Donglai said softly, there is a real expert in Emperor Dong's palace now. Even if I really give you what you want, you can't kill Tianlan, or even seriously injure him. Li Guangtu was stunned. He shook his head and said, I don't believe it. Believe it or not, it's up to you. Yu Donglai's attitude was indifferent. Li Guangtu looked at Yu Donglai seriously and asked, who is the expert that Uncle Yu is talking about? Yu Donglai did not answer this question. He thought of the fat man who opened a clinic in the central area of Emperor Dong's palace and had nothing to do all day but could go in and out of Li Tianlan's residence at will. When Li Tianlan brought Li Guangtu back, he wanted to help him stabilize his injury. At that time, the fat man was not there. So the first person that Li Tianlan thought of was Yu Donglai. But at that time, Li Guangtu's injury was so serious that even Yu Donglai did not dare to make a move at will. Then Li Tianlan called Nailan Shuriying. Nailan Shuriying injected some gene medicine that could stabilize Li Guangtu's body. Her suggestion at that time was to let Li Guangtu sleep. Li Tianlan refused. That night, Shenyuan Wushang returned to Emperor Dong's palace from Yuzhou. More than 10 hours later, Li Guangtu completely woke up. There was no dormancy, no poison. Just like that, he woke up naturally. In more than 10 hours, he recovered to the extent that it would normally take several months to recuperate. Yu Donglai did not know the origin of Shenyuan Wushang. But there was this mysterious doctor guarding Emperor Dong's palace here, which had made Yu Donglai doubt the power of black armor and cardinal. So during this time, he rarely went out of the laboratory to the ground. Most of the time, he was studying how to make cardinal and black armor evolve again. Li Guangtu looked at Yu Donglai seriously for a while. Seeing that Yu Donglai did not want to speak, he shook his head and fell silent. The elevator went all the way down. When it stopped, it was already in front of the biological laboratory of Emperor Dong's palace. Yu Donglai entered the password again. The elevator opened, and the two walked out. Then they stopped at the same time. Yu Donglai froze for a moment and laughed. Li Guangtu stood still and narrowed his eyes. In his sight, Qin Weibai, who had been there for a long time, was sitting on the sofa in the laboratory rest area. She was holding a glass of juice and sucking it with a straw. In front of her, there was a small pile of dried fruit shells. You're here.
Seeing Yu Donglai and Li Guangtu walk out of the elevator, Qin Weibai stood up and looked at Li Guangtu with a smile. She reached out and pointed to the various equipment and hibernation chambers in the laboratory. She chuckled and said, "Your Highness, this is not your first time here, is it?"
Chapter 1270. She came. It was this feeling again. It was this F*King feeling again. Li Guangtu held his breath slightly. Facing Qin Weibai's gaze, a clear fierceness flashed in his eyes. He didn't like this woman. From the first time he saw Qin Weibai, Li Guangtu was very sure about this feeling. That feeling was amazing, perfect, and dreamy. Even when he connected Hua Wu's death with Qin Weibai, Li Guangtu even thought that if she killed his son, he would let her give birth to another son for him. This was a woman that no man could resist. But Li Guangtu just wanted her body. No, he didn't. Standing there, such a woman would make most men have the idea of conquering her, and it would take absolute courage. It was a feeling that he was seen through at any time. All his thoughts, all his means, even the things he didn't think of, were transparent in front of her. Li Guangtu had disgust, hatred, fear for her, and even fear that he didn't want to admit. Facing such an opponent, he really had a feeling that he couldn't sleep or eat well. This feeling appeared when he saw Qin Weibai for the first time. On that rainy night in East Island, when she appeared in front of him in a simple shirt and black skirt, she was peerless. But behind this dreamy appearance, he saw an unfathomable abyss. Li Guangtu closed his eyes and forced himself to calm down. But Yu Donglai, who was standing next to him, clearly felt that Li Guangtu's body was constantly tense, and even his hair was standing on end. Yu Donglai couldn't help laughing. Li Guangtu didn't notice. Standing here, he felt his vulnerability for the first time. He was seriously injured and his strength was greatly reduced. For the first time, he found that he even lost most of his courage to face this woman. And the remaining half was laughably from Yu Donglai. If there was no Yu Donglai, in the enclosed space, not counting Dongqing Rushi and Situ Wanjia who were in a coma, this was a real man and a woman alone. Flirtatious? Li Guangtu felt that he would not think of these things unless he was crazy. In fact, if Yu Donglai wasn't with him and he met Qin Weibai here alone, he even felt that he didn't want to walk out of the elevator at all and would go back the way he came. Because this woman was extremely smart. But at the same time, this woman was also extremely crazy. She had wanted to kill him for a long time. Li Guangtu knew. In fact, when the two of them met for the first time, he had vaguely sensed it. And today, Li Tianlan wanted to let him go because of the deal he made with Li Huaqing. It could even be said that Qin Weibai was involved in this deal. But how could a woman be judged by logic? If she was unhappy, if she regretted it, if she didn't like him, if she suddenly had her period. Too many ifs could cause Li Guangtu to die here today. That would really be a futile death. Li Huaqing might be angry, but he was trying to keep her alive. Li Guangtu and the Purgatory of Heaven capital were both dead. Li Guangtu did not expect them to turn hostile and avenge him. As for Li Tianlan, what could he do to Qin Weibai? What could he do to Qin Weibai? Toss him on the bed, toss him twice, spank him twice, and that was it. But he was really dead. He might really be killed by this crazy woman. Qin Weibai took a step forward. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and tried his best not to let himself step back. His face was tight and looked a little livid in the dark laboratory, with a kind of indifference. "You know I've been here before?" "I'm not surprised at all," Qin Weibai said quietly. The defense monitoring system of Emperor Dong's palace could be said to be the best in the world, but there was still room for improvement. Before Li Tianlan came back, most of the intruders could be detected here. But for Li Guangtu, an expert who had surpassed the invincible realm, he could almost come and go as he pleased. Qin Weibai could be sure that Li Guangtu had been here before, not entirely by speculation, but by leaving a sword intent here by Wu Qing. If there were no intruders here, Wu Qing would never do this. But there was nothing to worry about. Ordinary people could not appear here. Those who could lie here must be people that Emperor Dong's palace attached great importance to. So every hibernation chamber was connected to the heartbeat of the wounded. Once the heartbeat of the wounded stopped, the entire castle would be completely closed from the inside out. In terms of the current structure of Emperor Dong's palace, it was impossible for Li Tianlan to come out without paying a price when the underground was completely closed.
So even if someone could successfully sneak in, they would not dare to kill, or they would be courting death, unless they were real men of sacrifice. And men of sacrifice at the peak of the invincible realm. There was no force in the world that could do such a thing.
Let's go, I'll take you to see Rushi. Qin Weibai reached out and pressed the switch of the first area of the laboratory. Soft lights lit up in the laboratory.
2 hibernation chambers were placed side by side in that area, and they were in the operating state. Above the hibernation chambers, rows of screens slowly showed various body data that Li Guangtu could not understand.
Her name is Li Yueshan. Li Guangtu emphasized it again.
Dongqing Rushi was the second miss of the Dongqing clan, a woman who was full of thoughts about Li Tianlan. She was his daughter, but he appreciated Li Yueshan's personality more. Qin Weibai stopped and said with a smile without any change in her expression, "Li Yueshan, oh, she's dead."
Murderous intent rose without warning. Li Guangtu stopped where he was. What do you mean? That personality disappeared, Qin Weibai said blandly.
Qin Weibai said faintly, "Split personality is a kind of mental illness.
The palace master helped Rushi in Snow Country.
You should know that she is a master in the spiritual field. It is not too difficult to erase a personality.
Although it is not easy, she succeeded. So Dongqing Rushi is Dongqing Rushi.
The Li Yueshan you miss all the time no longer exists."
She kept walking forward. Rushi is there. It's up to you whether you want to see her or not.
Disappeared. Li Guangtu muttered to himself.
He snorted. It's not completely disappeared.
It's just a subpersonality and... buzz!
The space in the laboratory was suddenly distorted.
The sharp and shining sword energy took shape directly without any preparation.
A storm appeared in the dark space.
Li Guangtu's body was completely tense, and his face, which had just appeared a little ruddy, instantly turned pale again. His eyes were blood red, and the surging spiritual power turned into the purest sword energy. The sword energy surged like a storm, and the cold airflow surged wildly.
Without the slightest warning.
The moment the wind sounded, the endless sword energy had completely enveloped Qin Weibai's figure. Blood mixed with broken bones exploded in the surging sword energy. Li Guangtu roared ferociously as if he had lost his mind. "How dare you kill her? How dare you kill her?"
Blood splashed everywhere. Qin Weibai disappeared. The sword energy also disappeared.
Then, the blood on the ground also disappeared. Li Guangtu's pupils contracted slightly, and he subconsciously turned to look at his side. Only then did he realize that it seemed to be too quiet around him when he took action.
Yu Donglai didn't stop him.
From beginning to end, the old man of the Li family didn't even make a sound.
Li Guangtu turned his eyes.
There was nothing around him.
Li Guangtu turned his head.
Behind him, at the elevator exit, Yu Donglai was standing there, looking at him helplessly and shaking his head.
He began to be in a trance. Li Guangtu's body shook a little.
The light in his sight lit up.
Qin Weibai reached out and pressed the switch of Area 1. The soft light lit up in the laboratory.
2 hibernation chambers were placed side by side in that area, and they were in operation. Above the hibernation chamber, various body data that Li Guangtu couldn't understand were slowly scrolling on the rows of screens. Qin Weibai stood in front of him and looked at him expressionlessly.
She seemed to be a little angry.
Li Guangtu closed his eyes and took a deep breath. After a long time, he asked, "The transcendent realm?"
"Almost there," Qin Weibai said faintly. "Spiritual domain."
"Spiritual domain." Li Guangtu muttered to himself, and the corners of his mouth kept twitching. He was also a guru in the spiritual domain, and he was almost at the transcendent realm. But his spiritual power was extremely turbulent. His spiritual power was pure sword energy. And Qin Weibai. Such spiritual power was the kind of power that was impossible to guard against and could change everything silently. Qin Weibai couldn't turn her spiritual power into sword energy. Li Guangtu also couldn't hypnotize others with spiritual power. So at that moment, he was hypnotized by Qin Weibai.
Li Guangtu's mouth moved.
"Moon God. Is it still important?"
Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu with some playfulness.
"The important thing is that you just wanted to kill me, and you have already taken action.
Your killing intent is so determined. Tell me, how should I kill you next to make you die in peace?" Chapter 1271. Qin Weibai showed her killing intent. She asked Li Guangtu how to kill him so that he could rest in peace, like a joke. It was faint, not obvious, very casual and careless. But this kind of killing intent was extremely intuitive. Because everyone knew that it was not a bluff. If Qin Weibai wanted to kill him, she could do it now without waiting for the future. Li Guangtu laughed. He tried to make a move but failed. His injury became more and more serious. In the dark and closed environment, it was even a little difficult for him to breathe. He glanced at Qin Weibai very coldly and walked to the hibernation cabin with the light on. You have the ability to kill me. I even think that you will not bear any consequences if you kill me now. I have to admit that you have always been the person I can't see through the most. I don't know what you think, what you want to do, and what you want to get. Because of your existence, I have to constantly think about every step to deal with Li Tianlan, for fear that it is a trap. Li Guangtu coughed twice and shook his head. In that case, I simply won't guess. As long as a person dies, whether he is willing or not, he will die in peace. If you want to kill me, in any way you want. Qin Weibai stood where she was, as if hesitating or thinking about something. Li Guangtu slowly walked to the hibernation cabin. The light in the hibernation cabin was also on. Dongqing Rushi was still in a coma, and her expression looked very tranquil. The exposed skin showed a kind of glowing white and tender skin under the light. Li Guangtu looked at his daughter silently. His and Li Shi's daughter. Dongqing Rushi was in a coma in the hibernation cabin, like a commodity without any vitality. Li Guangtu was expressionless. Moon God. Wow. He suddenly opened his mouth and said, both of my children were killed by you. I don't know what you are talking about. Qin Weibai stood behind Li Guangtu and calmly glanced at Yu Donglai, who was sitting in the reception area and did not follow them, and said calmly, you dare to do it, but dare not admit it? Li Guangtu sneered. Although there was no evidence, Li Guangtu had basically confirmed that the person who had killed his son in East Island was the master of Samsara Palace after a series of vague clues were constantly digging into it. Only the master of Samsara Palace. If it was just the likes of military counselor and saint, Huawu could run away even if he couldn't defeat them. Only the real invincible realm experts could kill Huawu there quietly. At that time, everyone in the dark world was attracted to East Island. The purgatory of heaven capital had not yet been born. They are in the dark. The dark world was shining. The intelligence system of the purgatory of heaven capital knew the whereabouts of all invincible realm experts during that time. During that time, no invincible realm expert appeared in Ninghu. The master of Samsara Palace was the only one. After the final battle with Gu Xingyun, although she had been recuperating in Zhongzhou state, no one had ever seen her. During that time, Qin Weibai was also in East Island. She was definitely an insider, or even a participant. I don't dare. Qin Weibai pursed her lips and smiled, looking elegant and graceful. Li Guangtu gritted his teeth. Huawu was born not long ago, and Tianlan just came back from the headquarters of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. He didn't hurt the child, and I have been here all the time. How could I kill him? Qin Weibai said. Li Guangtu took a deep breath and said coldly, you and I both know that Huawu is the eldest son in East Island. If he is still alive, he should be only 2 years younger than Li Tianlan, and he should be able to enter the invincible realm now. If you weren't afraid that his existence would threaten Li Tianlan's position? Are you kidding? Qin Weibai's clear voice suddenly had a trace of undisguised mockery and contempt. Li Guangtu fell silent. You know what kind of situation your son is in. He is in his teens, but he bears the power of the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. Li Guangtu, to be honest, do you really think of him as your son? His body can't bear that kind of strength at all. Under such circumstances, he is suffering great pain almost all the time. Whether he is awake or in a coma, the pain has never disappeared. I have never seen anyone train a successor in such a way. At the youngest age, you completely and unreservedly squeeze all the potential in his body. Don't you know what this means? You really know his existence. It's you. Li Guangtu slowly turned his head to look at Qin Weibai. For the first time, there was a touch of undisguised gloom and hatred in his eyes. Huawu's existence was extremely secretive. Except for himself, only Daybreak, Dawn and Phoenix in the Purgatory of Heaven Capital knew of his existence. And these three people had no possibility of betrayal, let alone Li Kuang-tu. If it wasn't them who did it, then who else knew of his existence? Huawu must have been killed by them. Although he already knew what was going on in his heart, when he heard Qin Weibai clearly say Huawu's physical condition at this time, the feeling of finally finding evidence and being confirmed still made Li Kuang-tu feel a strong hatred directly emerged in his heart. I know of his existence, but it doesn't mean I want to kill him. Haven't you heard of the power of the Samsara Palace's intelligence system? Qin Weibai sneered and said, Why should I kill him? Does your son deserve to threaten Tianlan's position? Li Honghe chose Tianlan as his successor. Do you think he will be devoted to your son? A son with half of East Island's blood flowing in his veins? Do you think it's possible? He doesn't even like you. How could he like his grandson, whom he has never met? Or do you think your son's talent can threaten Tianlan when he grows up? Perhaps he was indeed very talented, but his talent was destroyed by you. A so-called expert cultivated in such a way is as fragile as a piece of paper. Your so-called son, in your eyes, is there any difference between him and a consumable? After squeezing out all his potential, the upper limit of the thunder-shocking realm in his teens has long been determined. He can't even reach the peak of the invincible realm. Do you think he is qualified to threaten Tianlan? Li Kuang-tu, that's not your son. He's just someone you cultivated for yourself. Sometimes you need to sacrifice him to achieve your own goals. He's just an animal's thug, or a man of sacrifice. The corner of Li Kuang-tu's mouth moved, and he said stiffly, Shut up. You be *TCH with long hair but short vision. Snap. In the clear sound, the atmosphere in the laboratory suddenly became silent for a moment. Yu Donglai, who had been observing in the direction of the reception area, moved slightly. He hesitated for a moment and still didn't come over. Qin Weibai pulled out a disinfectant wipe from the side of the hibernation chamber and wiped her hands. She smiled casually and said, It's a pity that there's no one around. Otherwise, I wouldn't have slapped you myself. But it feels good. You're worse than an animal. What right do you have to call me AB*TCH? Li Kuang-tu, who was suddenly slapped in the face, didn't cover his face in disbelief, nor did he fight desperately. Fight desperately? He couldn't even beat an ordinary person now. In front of a spirit grandmaster like Qin Weibai, he had long lost the qualification to fight desperately. He reached out his hand and touched his swollen face, which was in pain, and laughed happily. I'll remember this slap in the face. If you don't kill me today, I'll pay it back. I'll wait. Qin Weibai casually threw the wipe she had wiped her hands into the trash can. She looked at Dongqing Rushi in the hibernation chamber and suddenly said, In fact, I probably know what you're thinking, and I also know that what you're thinking, even you don't think it's possible. Squeezing out one's potential to increase one's strength is a crazy method that disregards everything. For hundreds of years, all the major forces have been using this method to cultivate their own death warriors. Other than you, I've never heard of any force using this method to cultivate their own sons. It's not that there aren't successful examples. Li Kuang-tu said in a low voice, a little depressed. There were successful examples, and they really did exist. That was why he said that Qin Weibai had long hair and short vision. There are. Qin Weibai sneered. But it's a miracle. For hundreds of years, there has only been one successful example. Do you think your son is worthy of that person? There was indeed one successful example in hundreds of years. That was a story. That was hundreds of years ago, in the era when Jianghu State's national strength was flourishing and Jianghu State was not the strongest country. There was a story about a young man who wanted to climb up at all costs and a simple daughter from a wealthy family. Countless meticulous calculations allowed this story to have a perfect beginning, but at the same time, it was destined to have a tragic ending. In order to further his career, the young man who succeeded sent his wife to the most secret prison in Jianghu State at that time, along with the unborn child in his wife's belly at that time. The tortured woman gave birth to the child in prison. What was even funnier was that because of the turmoil in the prison that year, the chaos from inside to outside, and some luck, the child actually escaped from the prison at that time. There were often incredible coincidences in the arrangement of fate. The child who escaped from the prison and lost his mother at only a few years old did not freeze to death in that winter in Yuzhou. When he was looking for food in the garbage dump, he met a couple whose family was already down and out but not really frustrated. The couple took him out of Yuzhou and went to Kunlun Mountain where they lived in seclusion. This was the example that Li Guangtu mentioned.
It was the child who escaped from the prison, the one who lost his mother and escaped from the prison, with only hatred and extremes left in his mind.
Hatred was the strongest will. That will turned into a flame, almost burning the child into a complete madman. He trained in all kinds of extreme environments, ignored any pain and suffering, and even became stronger regardless of life and death. He burned his potential at all costs and even tortured his body to the point where it would completely collapse and die at any time. But at the same time, he also gained almost invincible strength. As for the price, he walked on the edge of death every minute and second.
The child who grew up was lucky because he did not die and succeeded in killing his biological father and the huge group behind his biological father.
This was a tragic story. And it was too long ago. For some reason, the record of this story in the history of Jianghu state was not very clear. So until now, almost no one knew how the child in the story had been trained to reach that level. But the name of that child still shown in the long history of Jianghu state. He was the strongest national god of war since the founding of Jianghu state. His name was Lin Xianyuan. Today's ancestor of the Lin clan, the founder of the Li family, created the 24 moves of sword, the map of god of war of the Li family and the Lin clan, pushed the Wang family of Beihai to the peak, and turned Jianghu state into the strongest overlord. Beihai had the stage of formidable person. The stone of formidable person was on the stage of formidable person. And Lin Xianyuan was the only name carved on the stone of formidable person that could stand side by side with the chosen one ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai. This was the successful example that Li Guangtu mentioned. Obviously, he wanted to train his son into another Lin Xianyuan. But it was just as Qin Weibai said. He could only think about it. Even he knew that it was unlikely. At that time, Lin Xianyuan was not only the national god of war of Jianghu state, but also the only god of war of the Wang family of Beihai. He did live to reach that height, but if the Wang family of Beihai hadn't helped him at all costs, even he wouldn't have survived. Can you afford that level of support? Even if you sell your current purgatory of heaven capital, including you and your child, you can't afford it. Qin Weibai said lightly. The Wang family of Beihai support for their god of war still left traces. For example, the current biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai. There was no such thing as a biological laboratory in that era. The Wang family of Beihai was now developing all kinds of potions, including the immortality potion that they treasured. To put it bluntly, the Wang family of Beihai set up a department for their god of war to survive and for the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai to keep her man alive. Such a move couldn't be solved by burning money. Many resources and countless rare materials were desperately consumed. The current purgatory of heaven capital really couldn't afford it. Even the current Emperor Dong's palace didn't dare to take too many risks if there was no clear direction. In fact, there is another way. Li Guangtu said lightly, his eyes flashing with anger and helplessness. I know what you mean. Qin Weibai's voice was more mocking. You mean the dragon vein? In other words, the flower that you've been longing for? Li Guangtu was silent. It's a joke. Qin Weibai shook her head. That flower has always been in my adoptive father's hands. Do you think you have any means to trick a metaphysics grandmaster to take the dragon vein? That belongs to Tianlon. Do you think you have a chance? Ha! Li Guangtu sneered. You seem to have forgotten that I also have the luck of the dragon vein. Not anymore. Almost instinctively, Qin Weibai said this. The luck of the dragon vein in Li Guangtu had been extracted by Xian Xuanzi before he died. After saying this, she suddenly fell silent. Because she suddenly thought of a doubt that she hadn't figured out before. Now Li Guangtu finally gave her the answer. Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes, and the coldness in her eyes became sharper. Huawu is my son. Even if I can't get the flower from Wu Wei, I can get rid of him and extract the dragon vein in my body and transfer it to him. In this way, Huawu's body will be nourished by infinite vitality. He won't be afraid of any injuries, and naturally, he won't have to worry about his body collapsing. In this way, Huawu will definitely be able to break through the Supreme Realm and become the Chosen One. Impossible. Qin Weibai said lightly, he doesn't deserve it. What qualifications do you have to say this? Li Guangtu said disdainfully. Because I've seen him. Qin Weibai suddenly laughed. She was telling the truth. She had really seen Huawu, who was killed by them that year.
Not the one she had seen, but the other one she had seen and even fought with.
But they were one. She had seen the other one, and naturally, she had seen it. That was Li Guangtu's first son, Li Huawu. He was also the heavenly emperor Huawu in another time and space. Qin Weibai had never been very clear about the use of Huawu, who was cultivated in this extreme way. Under normal circumstances, even if Huawu didn't die, his upper limit in the future was the invincible realm. He couldn't even reach the peak of the invincible realm, which was probably the level of Moongazer and Song at this time. But in that time and space, when they finally besieged Dongqing Huangtu, the strength that the heavenly emperor Huawu showed was indeed at the peak of the invincible realm, which was equivalent to Li Guangtu and Lin Fengting before the breakthrough. This was obviously a little unscientific. And now the reason was found. It was the dragon vein in Li Guangtu. Qin Weibai fell silent. Why did they kill Huawu back then? Qin Weibai could feel the inner feelings of her other self. It was not because he could threaten Li Tianlan.
At that time, Huawu's performance was amazing, but in the long run, he was really not a threat. The reason why they took action at that time, it was because of hatred. That was the deepest hatred of her other self for the Li family.
Why was it like this? Qin Weibai pursed her lips. Not every grandmaster of metaphysics could extract the dragon vein.
At the very least, they should have a relatively detailed understanding of the dragon vein.
To put it bluntly, the fate of Zhongzhou state was endless vitality. How ethereal was it before no one carried the dragon vein? Without a specific understanding, Xianxia could not extract the dragon vein at all. Even if he had a specific understanding, it was great luck that Xianxia could do it. In other words, after he joined the Samsara Palace, he learned what the so-called dragon vein was from Qin Weibai. But in another time and space, Qin Weibai and Xianxia basically had no intersection. There was only one person who could extract the dragon vein from Li Guangtu and transfer it to Huawu. That was Great Master Wu Wei, who also had no intersection with Qin Weibai in that time and space. The transfer of the dragon vein helped Huawu break through the upper limit, which meant that in the case of Li Tianlan's existence, the Li family's opposition, Li Guangtu could not instruct Great Master Wu Wei. So the only one who could instruct Great Master Wu Wei was. Qin Weibai took a deep breath. All the questions came back. Why did the person who could instruct Great Master Wu Wei do this?
When this question appeared, the answer was so obvious. Under such circumstances, if Li Tianlan, who carried half of the dragon vein, died, his vitality and fate would naturally be directly transferred to Huawu.
The Li family. Li Huawu. Li Honghe. That kind of hatred. Qin Weibai really understood. Suddenly, I really want to kill you. Qin Weibai whispered. Li Guangtu's pupils contracted suddenly.
At this moment, Qin Weibai's killing intent was still very faint, but Li Guangtu really felt a kind of near-fatal danger, which was completely different from the feeling just now.
Soon, Qin Weibai shook her head again. No, not only you, but you and your father deserve to die. No, all three of you deserve to die.
Li Guangtu was silent for a long time before asking, Do you hate us?
Shouldn't I?
Qin Weibai slowly turned her head and looked into Li Guangtu's eyes. At this moment, Li Guangtu had a creepy feeling for no reason.
Including that old B***starred? Li Guangtu braced himself to ask. He had a very bad relationship with Li Honghe. When he mentioned him, he usually called him an old B***starred.
He deserves to die the most. Qin Weibai whispered. Unfortunately, he's dead.
You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel.
Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.